Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see second part. What if strong Deku had a mysterious past? Here is short summary. What if Izuku decided his own story? Instead of living the life of a normal quirkless boy, his past is shrouded in mystery. The life of a hero is not as bright as people think. Izuku Midoriya will live the life of a true hero, one full of blood. Instead of having power given to him, he is born with his own. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. In the stadium, 4 individuals wanted to meet Izuku. The first person was Principal Nezu, who wanted to ask Izuku about his display of superhuman physical abilities in the first round and about his killing intent, but he highly doubted that he would get an answer for that one. The other was Shota Aizawa, who wanted to confirm Izuku's intention towards his schoolmates, even though he highly doubted that Izuku wanted to hurt anyone since the boy had proven himself when he risked his life at the USJ. Still, Aizawa wanted to hear those words of confirmation from Izuku himself. The third individual was Shoto Todoroki, who had decided to reveal his past to Izuku after the boy had somehow forced him to use his fire side of the quirk, something he never intended to do. Todoroki wanted to make it clear to Izuku that he would win against him without his fire powers. On the other hand, a certain flame hero named Endeavor was also on his way to meet Izuku Midoriya. He wanted to see the boy who forced his son Shoto to use his fire powers, even if for a moment. And he also wanted to investigate about the boy's mastery over killing intent, since Endeavor himself wielded the technique and knew how hard it was to achieve. In the stadium there was another man who almost looked like a skeleton. He had blue eyes and blonde hair and he looked really weak, which couldn't be further from the truth. This man had secrets only a handful of people knew about, and Izuku Midoriya was going to be added to that list soon. Izuku Midoriya had just stepped out of the locker room. Thinking about his upcoming battles, I know I can beat any of the finalists. But Todoroki-san and Tokiyami-san are the ones I need to look out for. My physical abilities are very limited without my quirk. He thought. Well, Tokiyami-san wouldn't be as much of a problem in the sunlight, but Todoroki-san is a different case, he thought as he remembered the huge ice attacks Todoroki used on the zero-pointers in the first round. If he uses those huge attacks, then I won't be able to break them. In fact, I can't break any of his ice attacks without my quirk. I'll have to find a way around it and get in close quarters while avoiding any ice attacks. That's the only way, Izuku thought as he sighed. If I hadn't learned total concentration breathing, I wouldn't have been able to increase my blood flow and reach superhuman levels of physical speed without my quirk. He thought, remembering his display of speed and strength during the obstacle race, and thought, killing intent and total concentration breathing are the only 2 combat skills in the world that can be used without a quirk. I'll have to use both of them to win in some of the battles ahead, he thought as the faces of some of his classmates in the third round came to his mind, but instead of being worried, he smiled as one thought came to his mind. The real fun is about to begin. Izuku was walking in the stadium when he felt he could access his quirk again. Nezu had texted him saying that he would turn the quirk-canceling bracelets off for the 1-hour break. While walking, Izuku couldn't help but think back to the look he saw in Todoroki's eyes. I wonder what happened to him. Those eyes held rage and hate, and even more than that, there was pain and loneliness in them. Izuku was snapped out of his thoughts when he noticed a man walk towards him. The man was huge, about as big as All Might, and parts of his body were covered in flames, and he was wearing a blue skin-tight hero suit. His expression was slightly aggressive with a small frown present on his face. This man is also strong. Very strong. Not close to All Might's level, but he has one of the strongest life force signatures Izuku ever sensed, and Izuku could tell that he stood no chance against him, just like All Might. Izuku used his quirk to sense if anyone was around them, only to find out that they were alone, and this man was staring at him specifically. Normally a person would look away from such a stare, but Izuku returned it, making eye contact, causing the man to look surprised if only for a second. The man stopped about 20 feet away from Izuku, causing him to stop as well. Both of them stared at each other for a few seconds when the man spoke up. I've been looking for you, the man spoke. How may I help you? Izuku asked back. I saw your performance up until now. Not only were you the fastest in the first round but you can use killing intent, the man said. He knows about killing intent, Izuku thought as he narrowed his eyes. That doesn't answer my question, how may I help you? And other than that, you still haven't introduced yourself, Izuku asked again, this time confusing the man. Huh, you don't know me, he asked confused. Why would I know you? Izuku asked back. The man's eyes furrowed as he let out a confused, huh, causing Izuku to tilt his head and let out a confused, The sight was a bit funny. The man's expression changed back to a slightly aggressive one, as he introduced himself. I am Japan's #2 hero, Endeavor, the flame hero. Endeavor introduced himself. It's surprising that you don't know me, he said. I was raised in a very sheltered area far from cities. I couldn't access the internet or television there, Izuku replied. A little surprised, Endeavor asked, there are still places like that? I'm afraid so, Izuku replied. Anyways, I want to who taught you killing intent, Endeavor asked. I'm afraid that's a personal question and I wouldn't like to tell a stranger about that, even if it's the #2 hero, Izuku said, and Endeavor huffed. Very well then. Not that it matters, in the end, my son will defeat you, he said, confusing Izuku. Your son? He asked. Yes, my son, Shoto Todoroki, Endeavor answered as Izuku understood. Ah, I see, but I'm confused, you sound like you're sure that Todoroki-san will win, Izuku said, and Endeavor replied. Of course he will, it's his duty as my son to surpass All Might, so naturally he can't lose in this festival, he said. Ah, this might explain that rage and hate in Todoroki-san's eyes and his scar, Izuku thought as he connected the pieces in his mind. He saw Endeavor walk back from the direction he came from and called, Endeavor-san. What is it, kid? Endeavor turned to Izuku again. I want to say that you're wrong, Izuku said, confusing him. Wrong? About what? He asked, turning to Izuku fully. You're wrong, Todoroki-san won't win against me, I can guarantee that, Izuku said with more confidence than Endeavor liked. You're quite overconfident, aren't you? He said, getting angry. It's not overconfidence if I can live up to my words, Izuku replied. At this, Endeavor frowned and released killing intent, but was again surprised to see Izuku unfazed. Feeling Endeavor's killing intent, Izuku released his own, and thus a clash of intents began. The temperature around them seemed to drop a little as they both intensified their intent. Endeavor's killing intent was different from Izuku's. Right now, Endeavor's eyes reflected anger and hate in them. The anger and hate were like an intense fire, unlike Izuku's cold eyes, which were like an unmoving body of cold water, the total opposite of Endeavor's, where the flame hero constantly used rage and hate to strengthen his mind. Izuku used temporary apathy and coldness to strengthen his mind, since he couldn't bring himself to hate anyone, making it a battle of wills between polar opposites with neither willing to give up. I admit I'm nothing compared to you in combat, but you can't defeat my willpower that easily, Izuku said as Endeavor frowned but stopped his intent. I don't have time for this right now, but one day I'll show you your place, Endeavor said and walked away. As Izuku watched him walk away, he let his muscles and facial expression relax to normal. My knowledge of heroes is not good. I need to research all the heroes I can, he thought, and was about to walk away himself when he sensed someone approaching him from behind. Turned to see the younger Todoroki come towards him, looking straight at him. Midoriya, if it's not a problem, can we talk for a minute? He requested calmly. Yes, go ahead, Izuku responded quickly, surprising Todoroki a little. Regardless, he calmed himself instantly and started. I want to tell you about my past and the story behind this scar on my face, he said, and paused, thinking Izuku would ask something, but when he didn't, Todoroki continued. Over the next 7 minutes, the boy summarized his life. Apparently, Todoroki's parents had a quirk marriage, meaning, in his case, Endeavor, the #2 hero, paid money to his wife's parents and bought her because of her ice quirk, in hopes of making a child who would have both quirks to counter each other's weakness and regulate their body temperature as to not overheat and vice versa. Shoto is their 4th child and the only one with both quirks, because of which Endeavor trained Shoto harshly from a young age, and neglected his other children and wife. One day when Shoto was 5 years old, his mother, in anger, compared his left side to his right and poured boiling water on his face, leaving the scar, leading endeavor to hit her and later put her in a mental hospital. Todoroki finished his story looking down. He said, "After that, I decided to never use my fire quirk in battle, and only fight with my ice powers to retaliate against my father and reject him." Todoroki finished his story and looked up to see Izuku, wondering what his reaction would be, only to find Izuku's narrowed eyes boring holes in his head. For some reason, Todoroki got the feeling that Izuku wasn't shocked or moved by his story, not that he wanted that to happen, but still, he had expected a little more reaction. Before Todoroki said anything, Izuku spoke. "Am I supposed to care?" he said sharply, surprising Todoroki. However, Izuku didn't stop. "I understand that you had a sad childhood, but that doesn't excuse you for not using your fire quirk," he said. "Your life is bad, but I assure you there are children out there who would exchange their conditions with yours in an instance." Now this offended Todoroki a little, but Izuku didn't give him a chance to speak. "Right now, somewhere out there a little child is dying, working as a slave for some random merciless criminal. That child never knew his parents. That child never had a warm meal in his life. That child doesn't know the meaning of happiness and love, and as future heroes, it's our job to save those children, but here you are sitting with a meaningless grudge against your father. You think anyone cares if you refuse to use your fire?" "Well, no," Izuku said as Todoroki listened. Deep down he knew Izuku was right, but his anger against his father was still clouding his judgment. Izuku continued his attack of words. "No one cares about those things, and not using your fire doesn't mean you don't have it. Your father's blood in you will never change, but if in the future people have to suffer casualties because you didn't want to use your fire, then never forget that those lost lives wouldn't be accidents, they would be murderers committed by your unwillingness to go all out, and their families will never forgive you. At that moment you will realize that you become something worse than your father." Izuku finished what he wanted to say, and without waiting for an answer he left, leaving a stunned Todoroki who started thinking about what Izuku said after recovering from his shock. On the other hand, Izuku stopped after walking a little far away and stopped thinking. Well, I might have gone a little too far, but making him realize his flaw is important. Otherwise he will never reach his full potential, Izuku thought. If his unwillingness to use his fire causes casualties in the future, then he will become a disgraced hero and people will never forgive him. Izuku paused again as a more darker thought came to his mind. But more than that, I believe Todoroki-san himself will never forgive himself if that happened, and that might break him. He's already trying to fight his pain alone. He really needs some guidance and companionship to save him. Izuku though, he looked at his fist as he clenched it a little. But that will come after I help him to use his fire, he thought, and then realized something. Well, if he uses his fire, then that would cause me a little more trouble. Izuku then smiled again confidently, but that still won't be enough to beat me, he thought as he sensed two more familiar people coming towards him. Aizawa-sensei and Principal Nezu. Guess I have some questions to answer, he thought, and walked towards them. Going through some corridors and flights of stairs, he saw them walking towards him. "Hello. I believe we have to talk about some things," he said, getting close to them, and Aizawa nodded. Aizawa opened the door to his right, confirmed that it was empty, and entered the room. "Come in," he said sternly, and Izuku and Nezu entered after him, and Aizawa locked the room. Izuku turned to face them. "I assume you want to talk about my killing intent?" he asked. "Yes. Tell me, how did you get the mindset to stay sane after killing someone?" Aizawa asked sharply. "I simply learned to control my emotions a long time ago so I can make proper decisions in combat. Nothing big," Izuku replied like it was a simple skill. Aizawa narrowed his eyes dangerously. "To be able to control what you feel and when you feel it or feel anything at all, that skill is not simple, and most people won't achieve it even if they train for the rest of their lives. It's not a simple skill, kid. The focus and control needed for that is on a different level." Aizawa paused for a second. "Theirs is a reason why most killing intent users rely on intense hate and anger to use it," Aizawa said, and looked at Izuku for an answer. "I understand that, sensei, and my quirk requires me to have complete control of my mental state at a meditative level to control my life force, While I don't need to control my emotions to use my quirk, learning to control my emotions was not that different, so I decided to learn it," Izuku answered, and Aizawa accepted it. "Okay, I'll accept that, but what about the second step? If you don't use anger or hate, then you couldn't have used some past memory to create the killing intent, so did you imagine killing them?" Aizawa asked. This time there was a different edge to his voice. "Yes, I used the visualization method and created hypothetical scenarios of killing them," Izuku said, making Aizawa widen his eyes with surprise and then anger. He then narrowed them and activated his quirk, making them glow red. With anger still present, he said, "You better explain yourself then," he said as he grabbed his capture scarf. "Calm down, sensei. Like I said, they were hypothetical scenarios I was able to make since I block off all my emotions. Rest assured I can still make logical decisions in that state and go back to normal in an instant. I would never hurt anyone innocent," he said as Aizawa calmed down a little, but he was still not happy. He sighed. "You really are a problem child, so I won't ask more questions," he said, causing Izuku to chuckle a little. Aizawa looked at Nezu, who was observing everything calmly till now. "I'm leaving, are you staying here?" he asked. "Yes, I have just one more question for young Midoriya. I'll leave after that," Nezu answered, and Aizawa nodded and walked to the door. He turned his head to look at Izuku. "Midoriya," he called, getting his and Nezu's attention, who looked at him. Aizawa continued, "If you need to talk, you can come to me," he said, and left the room, not waiting to see Izuku smile at him with a nod. In a few seconds, when Izuku was sure that Aizawa left and no one was around, he looked at Nezu and said, "You want to know about my performance, right?" he asked, and Nezu nodded. "Yes, your physical abilities in the first round were impossible to achieve without a quirk, so how did you do it?" Nezu asked. "Not impossible, sir. After all, I did it, and the secret is called total concentration breathing," Izuku said, confusing Nezu. "Total concentration breathing? I've never heard that term before. What is it?" Nezu asked. "It's a style of breathing that requires the user to take in as much air as possible and accelerate their blood flow and heartbeat while increasing their inner body temperature as well, making the user's bones and muscles become more energized. With this you can achieve a superhuman level of strength, speed, stamina, durability, endurance, as well as the mental abilities needed to keep up with their enhanced abilities, like a faster thought process and reaction time and control over slowing down one's perception of time. It also increases your natural healing speed and physical growth," Izuku explained, leaving Nezu stunned, and once again Nezu didn't show his emotions on the outside. Izuku continued, "Of course, there is a limit. As someone who mastered it, I can tell you this: total concentration breathing has its limits, and the boost is limited, and the power I displayed is the highest you can achieve with this skill, no more than that. While it's useful, in a world with quirks, it's not that great of a skill," he finished. Taking in a deep breath, Nezu calmed himself and replied with a smile, "Well, young Midoriya, that sounds like a useful skill indeed. Does it enhance quirks too?" he asked. Without missing a second, Izuku answered, "No. Quirks are more complicated than that, but to sum it up, increasing your blood flow and heartbeat is going to enhance your quirk," Izuku said. Nezu smiled and said, "I see, but it's still a useful skill. I was wondering if you could teach it to the student and teacher." "No, I won't." Nezu blinked and asked, "May I know why?" "Sir, this technique was originally used by warriors in ancient times, when weapons like guns and cannons weren't invented. In those times the breathing techniques were used by the strongest of warriors to cut through their enemies' iron armors and slice off their heads and limbs with ease," he informed, surprising Nezu, and continued, "However, in order to use this breathing technique, the user needs a strong and muscular body because the average person's body can't handle the stress. Over time, as humanity progressed in technology and made normal life easier, this martial art became forgotten in history. However, even today there are some marks left by the ones who mastered it long ago. One example is the dents and cracks in the floors and walls of the various martial arts temples in Asia. In the 21st century, athletes used these techniques, but on such a low level that they were still within the normal human limits," Izuku explained as Nezu absorbed the knowledge. "I understand, young Midoriya. You don't want such a skill to be known by just anyone and risk villains knowing about it, and it would be disrespectful to the martial artists of the past who spent their entire lives perfecting their skill. I understand your reasoning and accept them, but if you ever change your mind, please let me know. Nezu said. He then narrowed his eyes without a smile, but may I know how you remember all this? Didn't you lose your memories? Nezu asked. Izuku blinked and answered, you may know this, sir, that the human brain stores different information in different parts. My specific type of amnesia caused me to lose the memories of the events I lived through, but the information I shared with you just now is more like facts to me, so I remember it like I remember my basic education, he said, and Nezu chuckled. Relax, young Midoriya, I was just pulling your leg, he said, and Izuku tilted his leg a little confused. Pulling my leg, is that a metaphor, sir? He asked, surprising Nezu. You don't know, I was teasing you, Nezu said as Izuku nodded and then looked at the time on the wall clock. Okay, now I need to leave, sir, if I may. Izuku asked and Nezu nodded. Of course, young man, good luck in your next match, Nezu wished and Izuku accepted it and left the room. Nezu looked at the door as Izuku left the room and thought, that boy is keeping his secrets well hidden. Oh well, one day I will find out everything, Nezu thought with a smile. Outside, a few corridors away, Izuku was walking away from the room. Of course, Principal Nezu is on to my lie about the memory loss, I better not give him more hints, Izuku thought and looked forward, but it's fine, in a little time, he'll be too busy to investigate me further, Izuku thought, remembering his plan against Nezu, when a man walked past him and he blinked. Izuku turned to see who had passed him, to saw a fragile blonde-haired and blue-eyed man wearing oversized clothes. He concentrated on sensing the man's signature on his face and thought, this, life force is, his eyes widened a little and he called out. All Might Sensei. Chapter 4.2. The blonde man froze up when Izuku called him that but kept moving. All Might Sensei. I didn't know your quirk was a transformation type, Izuku said, and the man stopped again and turned back sweating. Who are you talking to, young man? I don't see All Might around here, he said, trying to hide his nervousness. Sensei, I recognize you from your life force, Izuku said as All Might widened his eyes a little comically and then grumbled, damn it, and then sighed and looked at Izuku. Young man, can we talk in private for a minute? This is important, he asked. Izuku, hearing the seriousness in his voice, nodded and followed him to an empty office. Would you like anything? Tea or coffee? All Might offered, but Izuku declined as they sat down on the sofa, facing each other. Sensei, what is all this about? I mean your physical state. And your life force is so much weaker than before, why is that? Izuku asked. Young Midoriya, first you must understand that this state of mine is a secret from the public. Only a few teachers in the school alongside Principal Nezu and a few of my own trusted friends know about this, he said as Izuku nodded and asked him to continue. About 5 years ago I fought a man. He was my strongest enemy. After a hard-fought battle I managed to defeat him, but in the process, I lost my stomach, and my respiratory system was damaged beyond repair. Since then I've been stuck in this weakened state for most of the time, and can only stay in my hero form for 3 hours a day, All Might revealed, surprising Izuku, but the look of seriousness didn't leave his face. I see, he muttered. Young Midoriya, I need you to keep this a secret, can you do that? He asked, and Izuku replied. Of course, Sensei, your secret is safe with me, he said, causing All Might to smile a little, and then he suddenly coughed up some blood. Concerned, Izuku got up and asked, Sensei, are you all right? Should I contact Recovery Girl? He asked, ready to provide some basic medical assistance. All Might waved his hand. No need, it's normal, he said, and Izuku sat down again. On another note, I saw you can use killing intent, All Might questioned. Yes, Aizawa Sensei and Principal Nezu had a chat with me about it. Are you concerned about it as well? He asked, and All Might chuckled. No, not at all. People who can't use killing intent, but know about it tend to get worried easily, but unlike Aizawa-san and Principal Nezu, I can use killing intent as well, so I know its users aren't evil, just skilled, All Might answered, surprising Izuku a little. Sensei, you can use killing intent as well. But how? He asked. All Might's mood turned a little saddened, but he kept his small smile. the man who injured me, also killed my master a long time ago. When I need to use killing intent, I simply remember his face," All Might explained, and Izuku nodded in understanding. "I see. I apologize if I triggered painful memories," Izuku apologized, but All Might waved it off. "No need, it's been a long time, I've moved on, and also my real name is Toshinori Yagi, so call me that when you see me in this form," All Might said. "I understand, Yagi-sensei," Izuku said, and All Might realized something. "I noticed you call me sensei, unlike other students who just call me All Might. Why?" he asked, and Izuku blinked. "Because you're my sensei," Izuku said, and All Might blinked again and then smiled. "I see," he said, and then thought, "the first student who always calls me sensei, strangely that makes me happy." All Might didn't notice, but the look in Izuku's eyes changed a little and he stood up and bowed, startling All Might a little. "Young man, what happened?" he began, but was interrupted by Izuku's next words. "As a part of the community you protect, I want to thank you, sensei, for not giving up and for still fighting even in your painful state," Izuku thanked him as All Might looked at him. "Young man, there's no need for this, it's my duty," again he was cut off. "No, it's not your duty to protect others, it's your choice. If every person used their power for good because it was their duty, then there would be no villains in this world. You chose to use your power for the betterment of society, no one forced you to, and you still do it willingly in your injured state, and for that, you have my respect, sensei," Izuku finished. All Might was stunned. Never had he expected to be thanked so sincerely by someone he had just met a few days ago. Right now he was truly happy. He was thinking of what to say back when Izuku looked up again, this time making eye contact with All Might and with eyes filled with determination seen in a few, he said. "Sensei, don't worry, I will become strong enough to relieve you of your burden, I promise you, so don't worry about the future generations," he said, once again making All Might smile. "I see, well then, I'll leave the future to you, kid," he said and got up, "but for now, you kids can relax, because," suddenly smoke came from him and he became larger in size and in his deep voice finished, "I am here," he said and patted Izuku's head. "You should leave now, young Midoriya. You only have another 30 minutes left to rest before the next round begins," he said, and Izuku nodded in agreement. "Please allow me to leave, sensei," he said, and All Might wished him luck before sending him off. What a kind child, All Might thought as he turned back to his weakened state and thought of how to tell the others about the fact that now a student knows of his truth. "Aizawa-san is gonna kill me," he sighed. Izuku walked outside and stood in front of a railing, looking at all the people enjoying their day and students participating in sports events, and smiled. He reflected back to the last 30 minutes that were supposed to be for him to rest but turned into some stressful revelations instead. "Well, I haven't caught a proper break my whole life," he thought, and pulled out his phone and called someone. "Hello, Midoriya-san," Izuku heard. "Hello, Hiroshi-san, how are you?" "I'm fine, how about you, are you well?" he asked. "I'm fine as well," Izuku answered. "Kid, you did great. I was worried in the second round when you said you wouldn't move, you really scared me there. How did you keep everyone away from you?" he asked. "Right, most people don't know about the killing intent," Izuku thought and answered. "Well, it has something to do with my quirk," he lied smoothly. "Hiroshi-san, I wanted to know about the advertisements, is anyone taking them?" Izuku asked, changing the topic. Excited, Hiroshi answered, "Taking them? Of course, they did. Some girls are going crazy about it. I saw 2 girls pulling each other's hair for your photo, till some heroes separated them. Apparently teenage girls think that you're really hot and cute, and some little kids already like the cool big bro, and that's good for the future. The higher-ups are impressed," Hiroshi said. Hearing about the fight between girls, Izuku blinked in surprise. "I'm not that handsome, am I?" he asked himself. "Hey Midoriya-san, I gotta leave now, bye," Hiroshi said and disconnected without waiting for an answer. Izuku looked at his phone and sighed, pocketing it. "Well, I should rehydrate myself and come up with some strategies, or maybe I can meditate," he thought, and went to recharge some energy for the battles ahead. Chapter 4.4 The 1-hour break was over, Izuku's quirk-canceling bracelets were working again, and everyone was ready to start the one-on-one tournament. "All right everyone, Let's start the 1vs1 tournament. Here are the matchups for the first round. Midnight exclaimed into her mic and pointed towards the huge stadium screen. Everyone watched in anticipation as student pictures blinked on the screen dramatically and then suddenly stopped. There you have it, folks. The first match is between Izuku Midoriya and Hitoshi Shinso. Present Mike yelled as the crowd roared. Izuku looked to see that he was in the first match against Shinso and started walking away as his classmates wished him luck. On his way, Ojiro had tried to tell him something about Shinso's quirk, but Izuku refused to listen and left saying, "Don't worry, I'll win no matter what his quirk is." Izuku stopped in the tunnel which was the exit to the battle stage. All right everyone, Midnight called. The rules are simple: defeat your opponent by their knockout, submission, or throw them out of the ring. If a fight goes overboard, myself and Smintos will stop the battle. She explained the rules. Now walk in, she yelled, and Shinso walked out first. Now enters the only student who made it to the final match. Give it up for Hitoshi Shinso. Present Mike announced and the crowd cheered for the boy. When Shinso got on the stage, it was Izuku's turn. As Izuku walked out of the tunnel, the crowd cheered way louder, and Present Mike had much more to say. Now walks in the student of the hero course. The 1WHO has maintained a winning streak since the start and hijacked the opening speech. That's right, it's Izuku Midoriya. Present Mike finished. As Izuku walked onto the stage, the crowd cheered louder, something that made Shinso scoff. Dame privileged brat, he thought. I know those eyes. He has the potential to be a hero, but only if I can get through to him now, Izuku thought. Seeing that both boys were ready, Midnight started the match with a loud, "Begin." Even though the match started, neither boy moved for a few seconds. You're quite lucky, aren't you? Shinso began. Being born with that quirk, with that strong quirk, and having the ability to make everyone scared of you, you're quite gifted. He then looked at his own hands. Me on the other hand. I was born with a villain's quirk, so I didn't get accepted in the hero course. Man, I did lose the genetic lottery, he said with a mock chuckle and looked at Izuku. Izuku to his credit didn't reply, causing Shinso to narrow his eyes. Does he know? He thought and calmed himself. Did the monkey boy tell you not to speak? Hearing the insult on Ojiro, Izuku narrowed his eyes and began to say something. Seeing Izuku open his mouth, Shinso got excited, believing that his victory was certain now, but hearing the one word Izuku said made Shinso stop using his quirk. He narrowed his eyes in anger and asked, "What did you just call me?" Unfazed by the look, Izuku repeated himself, "Hypocrite, I called you a hypocrite, Hitoshi Shinso, because you say you were discriminated against because of your quirk, yet you called Ojiro-san a monkey because of his quirk. What else should I call you if not a hypocrite?" Izuku said. It worked, Izuku thought. When Shinso had tried to make Izuku speak at the start of his speech about luck, Izuku hadn't suspected it much, but stayed quiet since the boy's quirk's name is brainwash. But when he tried to anger Izuku by insulting Ojiro, Shinso had made a slip-up by asking if Izuku was warned to not speak, which allowed Izuku to understand that Shinso's quirk requires the enemy to talk for some reason, but because of Izuku's secret agenda of reaching out to Shinso an emotional level, Izuku had taken a risk by calling Shinso a hypocrite, something that he believed would anger Shinso enough to seek answers for the accusation, and since Izuku was still in control of himself, it seemed his little physiological game had worked. Shinso scowled, anger plastered on his face. He said, "What do you know, you privileged bastard?" He retorted. Izuku sighed and said, "More than you think." His sentence was unfinished as his eyes turned a little white and he froze up. Shinso smirked and thought. He fell for it, and without wasting time he said, "Now walk out of the ring." The audience was confused and then shocked as Izuku turned and started walking out of the ring. Present Mike started asking questions about Izuku's behavior and his classmates looked at him in shock and worry. However, Aizawa was calm. The brainwash quirk is quite strong. When a person replies to Shinso, Shinso can use his quirk and control them into doing anything, he thought and then sighed. The winner of this match was confirmed the moment the matchup was announced, he thought as he looked at Izuku. Shinso was smirking as Izuku walked closer to the edge, while 1A was looking in worry, and the audience was still a bit confused. "I win," Shinso thought. However, suddenly Izuku stopped walking. What the? Shinso muttered in surprise and confusion. Izuku's body trembled a little as Shinso felt his loss of control over Izuku's body. What the hell is happening? He muttered in confusion and shock. Aizawa closed his eyes and thought, the brainwash quirk is strong, and would be effective against a normal person. However, he opened his eyes and looked at Izuku again. Those who can use killing intent have the kind of mental strength that can counter quirks like that, he thought. Shinso just had the misfortune of facing Midoriya in the first match. Aizawa finished as Izuku got control over his body again and turned around. Okay, done. Now I know that replying to you is the condition to using your quirk, so as long as I don't let you start the conversation, I can talk, Izuku said. Now Shinso-san, I have something to say to you, so please listen, he said, confusing a still stunned Shinso. Shinso-san, while I accept that hero selection is highly dependent on what quirk you have, but that doesn't mean you didn't have a chance to join. You just didn't try hard enough, Izuku said, angering Shinso with the last part. But Izuku didn't give him time to say anything and continued, if you walk into my class's boys' locker room, you'll see that just about everyone have abs and defined muscles. Even though some of their quirks aren't reliant on them, they train their body every day and gain muscle mass, because they know it's important regardless of their quirks, Izuku said, causing Shinso to flinch a little and looked at himself again. Izuku walked towards him and continued. I can tell from here that you didn't have any muscles. Your posture tells me that you don't know any martial arts either. You didn't even try to work hard and blamed luck for your incapability. He said, if you want to blame luck for the way your life is, then fine, you can do it, but remember, it won't change the fact that today you sole relied on your quirk both in the first round and the second round because you knew that you didn't have the stamina to run for long in the obstacle race, and that you didn't have the strength to snatch anyone's headband by force in the cavalry battle. He finished as he reached Shinso, who now had a look of horror on his face as he faced the facts. Why, you're right, I didn't even really try my whole life, did I? He asked as he fell to his knees, now grabbing his face. The others were confused about what was happening except Midnight and Smintos, both of whom were close enough to hear Izuku and Shinso. Izuku sighed, and said, Shinso, one must first understand oneself before trying to understand others. Till now you refused to see your own flaws and blamed luck, which held you back, but now that you understand and accept your mistakes, you can finally progress, he said, and Shinso looked at him. If you want, then I can help you get stronger, Izuku said. Help me, Shinso repeated in confusion. Yes, help you, but only if you have the resolve to change yourself, Izuku said. Why do you want to help me? He asked. Hearing that, Izuku looked at him. With the sun shining right behind him, he answered, because I'm a hero, he said, making Shinso widen his eyes. Izuku continued, and if I give up on you now and don't even try to help, then my words and ideal would be proven meaningless, and I refuse to let that happen, so know that Hitoshi Shinso, I believe in you, Izuku finished. At that moment Shinso's eyes widened as he heard those words, as he remembered the only other person who ever believed in him, who dedicated her to his dream and worked day and night to raise him all alone. He remembered his mother's tired face which never stopped smiling for him, who was still at her job right now so she can raise him in comfort after a hero finally arrested his abusive father. Now seeing Izuku say that he believed in him and offer him help, some tears fell out of his eyes unwillingly. Seeing this, Izuku looked at Midnight and nodded, causing her to sigh. Shinso was no longer in the mental condition to fight anymore. Hitoshi Shinso is no longer able to fight. Winner, Izuku Midoriya, she announced. Izuku turned and left the stage with some more words to Shinso. Seek me when you have your resolve, he said, and left. Seeing the victory, everyone was confused, but soon cheers were heard, although they were low and confused. What just happened here? For the first time, even present Mike was confused and not loud for once. Next to him, Aizawa had just finished hearing from Smintos about what had happened and thought, what a fairy tale ending. Well, he did manage to help someone, but I don't think that kind of victory can be repeated, he thought. As fate would have it, Aizawa is right, because this was Izuku Midoriya's first and last battle won by words. After this, All other battles will be bloodbaths for the rest of his life. As Izuku reached the 1A's sitting area, he thought, I need to put up a show now. I'm surprised that my speech worked at all. Oh well, at least I managed to start one of my plans. When he got to his class he was greeted with congratulations and questions about why Shinso didn't fight and what happened down there. Izuku didn't give a straight answer and sat down on a seat, and looked down to see Shiro, his classmate with a quirk that lets him shoot tape from his elbows, and Todoroki facing off against each other. The match began and ended in a second as Todoroki created an ice glacier that went higher than the stadium itself, shocking everyone, including Izuku. However, he kept it well hidden, unlike others. Izuku looked at Todoroki in surprise. Okay, I did not expect that. If he uses that attack on me, then breathing technique won't be enough to let me break free. What can I do to avoid that? As he was thinking of different ways to defeat Todoroki, who had just become his next opponent, he noticed something about Todoroki. The right side of his skin seems to be covered in patches of ice. Is he suffering from frostbites? Ah yes, both his quirks are to control his body temperature, but if he doesn't use his fire quirk then, an idea clicked into Izuku's mind. He smiled. Well, I would be making a 180-degree turn, from using kindness to defeating Shinso to literally using killing intent to defeat Todoroki. Still, yeah, this should work, and if everything else goes properly, I'll be able to make Todoroki use his fire and make a destructive battle happen as well. That should excite the audience, he thought, and luckily no one noticed his smile and the matches continued. The rest of the matches were quite predictable for Izuku. In match 3, Abara defeated Kaminari with ease. Her plant-based quirk nullified Kaminari-san's attack. Izuku narrowed his eyes, but the main reason he lost is that he lacks greed, and I'll change that. In match 4, Mei Hatsume used Ida to display her gadgets, used him as a tool of advertisement, and then gave up the match. Well, I did not expect that, Izuku thought with a sweat drop. In match 5, it was obvious who would win. Aoyama had limited use of his quirk, so Mina won with ease. Izuku wasn't really interested in this matchup. Match 6 had Izuku's attention because he wanted to see Tokiyami in action, and he was not disappointed. Tokiyami made his match look easy and won, but there was room for so much progress. Match 7 was entertaining, but Kirishima and Tetsu have similar quirks and about the same stamina, and after a tie, the match was settled with an arm wrestling match which Kirishima won. Match 8 was between Uraraka and Bakugo, which Bakugo won. While the winner was obvious to Izuku, he was impressed by Uraraka's performance. When the first round was finished, Midnight called for the combatants for the first match in the quarterfinal round, which were Izuku and Todoroki. When the names were called, Izuku's eyes searched for the one person who influenced it indirectly and saw Endeavor walk inside the stadium, most likely to meet Todoroki, who never came to the stands after his match. Izuku sighed and started walking, with his classmates wishing him luck again, this time telling him to do his best instead of winning since he was fighting a classmate. Something that made Izuku smile. They all are nice people, he thought, and left for his match. As Izuku was close to the tunnel he would enter the stage from, an extremely enraged Todoroki was also ready for his battle ahead after having an unpleasant talk with his father. About 5 minutes later, Izuku and Todoroki walked out as Present Mike introduced them again. On one side is the Ice Prince, son of the number 2 hero Endeavor. The 1WHO won his match in a second and literally shook the entire stadium. That's right, it's Shoto Todoroki, he yelled as the crowd roared in excitement. On the other hand, we have today's star. The 1WHO hasn't lost even once today. The boy WHO defeated his opponent with words alone. Everyone welcome, Izuku Midoriya, he said, and the crowd was slightly louder this time. Izuku looked at Todoroki and narrowed his eyes. That look of rage and hate, it's not directed at me. Looks like Endeavor said something to make him mad. On top of his own resolve, those specific emotions will help him overcome my killing intent more. Did Endeavor-san this specifically so Todoroki-san can withstand my intent easier? Izuku thought, looking at Todoroki's terrifying expression. One would think that the boy has gone insane. Midnight looked at the boys and asked if they were ready. Getting nods of agreement in return, she said, begin. Unlike Izuku's previous battle, The combat began instantly as Todoroki swung his right arm forward, creating a wave of ice that traveled toward Izuku. Seeing that the wave was about 7 feet in height and 10 feet in width, Izuku, who was using his total concentration, breathing without break, jumped over it as the wave passed from under him harmlessly, and he began his strategy. Once again, he released his killing intent that reached Todoroki, specifically targeting him. While his expression didn't change, the intent accomplished its task, making him a little nervous. It's that feeling again. Should I make a huge ice attack as I did before? No, I don't know the limits of his physical enhancement. If he breaks out and my body temperature drops too much, he'll win easily. I'll cover the entire stage with my ice and force him out of bounds. Todoroki made his strategy, not knowing he was falling into Izuku's trap. Good. The killing intent is making him nervous about the outcome of his huge ice attack just enough as to not use it, Izuku thought. But maintaining killing intent with physical movements is extremely restrictive and difficult. I have to finish this quickly, he thought. Indeed, killing intent was not meant to be used in the middle of physical combats. The focus required to maintain it can't be achieved. In this case, Izuku does not even have the time to visualize any scenario and has to work with just the vocal thoughts of killing his target, making it far weaker than it was during cavalry battle. Izuku looked at Todoroki and then charged forward to cover the distance. Seeing this, Todoroki created a small wall of ice on his side facing Izuku and shot blunt spikes of ice from them. Seeing the fast approaching ice spikes, Izuku glided on the ground, letting them sail over him harmlessly. He jumped a little and started running again. Todoroki again sent a wave of ice towards Izuku, and Izuku jumped to his right and tried to make his way around the new ice wave, only to be stopped by a third, forcing him to jump again, only to see that more ice spikes were flying towards him. He can't dodge them midair, Todoroki thought, but was surprised when Izuku changed his position midair and managed to avoid the spikes. Todoroki's expression hardened again as he got ready to attack. When? Tell me, Shoto. Izuku called him by his first name with no honorifics, surprising him a little. Izuku continued after landing on top of the third ice wave. Tell me, Shoto, why don't you use your fire? Wouldn't it be much easier to push me out of bounds with fire? Izuku asked, or more like said. Todoroki narrowed his eyes in slight anger and said, You already have the answer. I refuse to accept my father. Izuku raised an eyebrow. You're still stuck on that. Didn't I say before, no matter how much you hate him, the blood in your veins will never change, Izuku said, angering Todoroki. Shut up, he yelled and released another ice attack, but Izuku jumped to his right on the previous ice waves. You say that power is your father's, then how do you control that fire? Izuku yelled as he stopped his killing intent, since the battle movement didn't let him maintain it. Todoroki's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't stop his attacks and sent more ice spikes and waves. Izuku performed a backflip, letting some spikes fly from under him, and then performed a front kick, breaking another, then quickly caught one in his right hand and threw it like a dagger at another, and then jumped over another wave of ice. Shoto, what you want to reject is your father, so why ignore your fire quirk? That will achieve nothing. Pushing others away and isolating yourself will make you the same as your father. Don't make that mistake. Quirks are mere tools to be used. Your ideals is what defines you. Use that fire of yours and become someone different from your father. Remember why you want to be a hero at all. Become the hero you want to be, Shoto Todoroki. Izuku exclaimed with passion in his voice, a passion he hoped would reach Todoroki and be answered the same way. Hearing Izuku's words, Shoto remembered a day from long ago, when he was with his mother, watching the news, amazed to see how All Might had managed to save many people, all the while smiling, and how the screams of fear had turned into cheers filled with hope at his arrival. Shoto Todoroki remembered the words he had said to his mother with a bright smile, Mommy, one day I'll be a hero who can save everyone. And his mother had sweetly replied with a smile and a hug, Then I will wait for that day, my little hero. Todoroki widened his eyes as the memory finished. He looked down a little, stunned. He muttered to himself, I haven't been keeping that promise, have I, Mom? Then he clenched his fist, but he looked up with a new resolve in his eyes. It's time I change that. It's time I become the hero I want to be. As fire ignited from the left side of his body, he yelled, I'll become the hero I want to be. In the stands, Endeavor walked to the railing with heavy steps, the fire around him seeming more excited. "That's it, Shoto. Accept your fire and surpass all might," he yelled with a crazy smile. The audience was also surprised at the display of fire and cheered louder. The students were also shocked to see Todoroki's fire powers properly for the first time. However, the two boys on the battle stage covered in ice didn't care about anything, not the cheers of the audience, the shock of their classmates, and neither what Endeavor was yelling. At that moment, their battle was all that they cared about. "You made me use my fire, but you might lose now, Izuku," he yelled with a confident and pleased smirk. Izuku gave his own confident smile and said, "We'll see about that in a few seconds." Todoroki, instead of being angered, smiled even more. "Then let's finish this," he exclaimed. An even more intense fire and ice came from his body and he shot forward huge amounts of both. Izuku looked at his surroundings and smiled. "Looks like it's ready." Midnight and Smentos widened their eyes as they saw the huge attack from Todoroki and decided to intervene. "This has gone too far," they thought, and released their quirks, Midnight creating purple sleeping gas and Smentos creating extremely huge walls of cement in the middle of the fighting ring. Izuku looked at the rising wall of cement and thought, "Well, this makes it easier." He jumped on the rising wall that was going to be at least 10 stories high. Watching this, Nezu's eyes narrowed a little. The air temperature in the ring is extremely cold and now young Todoroki is heating it quickly, which would result in... Nezu's eyes widened in realization. Aizawa came to the same realization and muttered in disbelief, "This crazy brat." The extremely cold temperature suddenly turned blazing hot, causing the air to expand rapidly and create a huge blast, blowing up the walls Smentos created as Izuku jumped as high as he could on top of the wall, barely saving himself from the explosion. At the moment of the explosion, huge and small chunks of ice and debris from the 5 cement walls flew all over the battle stage and out of bounds, crashing on the grass harmlessly. The fire from the explosion was scorching and very bright, forcing many to clench their eyes shut as waves of hot and cold wind hit them all. Stunned, shocked, and baffled, everyone looked at the rising smoke caused by the destructive battle of the two young boys. As the smoke cleared, everyone saw Izuku fall and land on one of the walls, leaning on another and using it like a ramp, and ran on it a little. Getting the momentum needed, he jumped on another wall and made his way down with multiple hops, and used a diagonal part in the rubble and skidded to a stop, and dusted himself. Izuku wasn't completely uninjured. Parts of his uniform had cuts and small holes in them, as well as some burn marks on his skin and forearm. Aizawa looked at Izuku still in a little shock. This kid, he was running around acting like he was just dodging the ice attacks, but he was just trying to make the air temperature drop. Aizawa said in the mic as most people who didn't know what happened started listening to understand how the explosion occurred. Aizawa continued, "When Todoroki used his fire quirk, the air expanded quickly, causing the explosion. Midoriya fought this battle with mostly intelligence," Aizawa explained as everyone understood what happened and slowly started cheering. But Aizawa had one more question he kept to himself and thought. The chances of the explosion happening were dependent on Todoroki's fire powers. If they weren't strong enough, then the explosion wouldn't have happened, and no one had seen his full ability with fire before, so why did Midoriya make such a gamble and held back when he is much faster and stronger? Aizawa thought, recalling Izuku's powers and speed from his battle with the Nomu, not knowing about Izuku and Nezu's little bet and Izuku's quirk restriction. Midnight snapped out of her daze and looked to see that Todoroki was out of bounds and Izuku was still inside. Seeing that, she raised her hand and said, "Since Shoto Todoroki is out of bounds, Izuku Midoriya is the winner," she announced, and the audience cheered louder. As everyone started cheering, Izuku walked towards the almost unconscious Todoroki, who was on the rubble of his own ice. He looked at Izuku weakly and listened to the words he would remember for the rest of his life. Izuku looked at Todoroki and began, "The toad trapped in the well will never comprehend the depth of the ocean," he said. "Till now, you were that toad, and your anger and hate were the well that trapped you. Now that you are free, go and see for yourself how vast the ocean really is," he said, and walked away, as the medics came to take care of both boys. Chapter 4.6. After the stage was fixed from the destructive battle between Todoroki and Izuku, which almost destroyed the entire battle stage. The matches continued. At the same time, Izuku and Todoroki were taken to Recovery Girl. Todoroki was still unconscious, but Izuku's injuries healed completely and he had recovered by the time of his match in the semifinals, which was against Ida. The semifinals were Izuku, Ida, Tokiyami, and Bakugo, an outcome he had already predicted from observing them and their opponents earlier. Izuku had made his way to his usual spot in the tunnel waiting to be called. Well, at least this time I don't have to worry about fixing someone's emotional damage, he thought with a light mental chuckle. Outside, everyone was waiting for Izuku's next fight. After his destructive battle with Todoroki, the other battles weren't as impressive, so they hoped to see Izuku again. Without delay, Midnight called both Ida and Izuku onto the stage. As Ida walked in, present mic began. Now comes in the representative of Class 1A. The speed demon of the cavalry battles. That's right, it's Tenya Ida. At his intro, the audience cheered for him. Then Izuku walked in and present mic began again. Now welcome the boy who's maintained his spot at the top till now and became the victor of his destructive match. Welcome Izuku Midoriya. He finished and the audience roared again. Once again Midnight confirmed if they were ready and started the match with a loud, "Begin." This time Izuku rushed in first at full speed, surprising Ida a little since he never attacked first. I won't give him the time to use his Recipro Burst, it'll be too annoying to deal with that speed without my quirk, Izuku thought as he reached Ida and threw a punch to his face. Ida tilted his head a little to dodge as he jumped back a little, activated his quirk to his first gear, and dashed to his right at about 20 km/h as Izuku followed him. I see, he won't give me the time to use my Recipro Burst, Ida realized as they made a sharp turn at the corner of the huge stage. Running close to the edge, Ida activated his second gear and jumped a speed of 40 km/h. Izuku, who was running at Ida's side just 2 steps behind, thought, Ida-san has 3 gears. First gear takes his speed to 20 km/h. Second gear takes it to 40 km/h, and finally third gear is his top speed of 60 to 65 km/h. On the other hand, my top speed is 55 to 60 km/h. I can't let him activate his third gear, he thought as he remembered the conversation he once had with Ida in the first week and ran slightly faster. Just when Ida ran long enough to activate his third gear, Izuku came next to him and threw a left kick to his head, forcing him to duck and slow down as he turned on his heel to face Izuku. Izuku didn't waste time in recovering his balance, and by the time Ida faced him he had transitioned from his left kick to a side kick with the same leg, hitting Ida in the chest and forcing him back a few steps as Izuku charged him again. Izuku threw a jab to his jaw hinge, and then a punch to his temple, followed by a left hook to his ribs, and then a right uppercut to the chin, making him lose his glasses. Izuku then grabbed his shoulders and pulled him down, and kneed him in the solar plexus, making him cough out Silva. Izuku pushed him back a little and then performed a left kick, sending him out of the edge they were standing close to. Ida's right nostril, right hole of the nose, and left side of the lower lip were bleeding. The knee to the solar plexus had knocked the wind out of him. Izuku had aimed for some of the best spots to hit a person at, being the nose, jaw hinge, chin, and temple, causing Ida to black out. Izuku had obviously held back on the strength of the attack so as to not break Ida's bones. The hand-to-hand combo was precise. All the attacks were thrown perfectly with no wasted movement, with a level of skill and precision that could only be reached from years of practice, letting all the heroes watching know that he had trained himself beyond just his quirk and focused on other skills as well, something most people don't do for nowadays. Midnight looked at Ida and then at Izuku and announced, Tenya Ida is unconscious and out of bounds. Izuku Midoriya is the winner, he announced, and everyone cheered, but this time the civilians were less audible. Aizawa watched this and told present Mike to say something specific, confusing him, but he followed anyway. Would you look at that? Another quick victory for Izuku Midoriya. A little too quick, I would say, he said as most of the civilians nodded, and seeing their reaction, the heroes around finally realized the reason behind their lack of cheers. The lack of enthusiasm was caused by the fact that Izuku was winning his matches, quickly, a little too quickly. The matches between other students lasted a few minutes, but Izuku's fights ended in 10 minutes at most. Aizawa, seeing this, decided to give the hopeful symbol of peace of the next generation a hand again. Aizawa, seeing that his stage was set, acted as if he was replying to the present mic. It's true that Midoriya won quickly, and it's good for a hero. He started getting everyone's attention. The battles against villains happen on the streets in crowded cities, and there can be many villains, so winning as quickly as possible is good. So Midoriya winning quickly is good, since in real life, as a hero he can go and save more people and defeat more villains, he said, as everyone nodded to themselves at answers common sense, but that still didn't answer the question of how Izuku was winning so quickly and effortlessly. Aizawa sighed and began answering. As for the reason he won so quickly is that, so far Midoriya has been smarter than his opponents, using his intelligence and knowledge to defeat them, he said, and many remembered how Izuku used Todoroki's quirks against him and how he analyzed the tunnel trap at the beginning of the obstacle race. Aizawa continued, he is also a little above his schoolmates in terms of physical abilities, he said, referring to his display of speed in obstacle races and his strength when he destroyed metal plates with kicks alone and dented them with his punches. Aizawa added the last piece of his analysis, he is also far more skilled in martial arts and gymnastics compared to others, he said, and they remembered Izuku's gymnastics skill from the mine trap in the obstacle race, and martial arts skills from him destroying the robots in his fight with Ida. The answer came to many people's minds and they blinked in surprise, wondering how they didn't realize the reason behind Izuku's quick victories. For those who didn't, Aizawa said it out loud. The reason he's winning so easily is that no student has been a challenge for him so far, he said, and many blinked and realized. Izuku Midoriya was just far superior to his schoolmates. The students started talking and complaining to each other about what was said, saying that they weren't inferior to Izuku. Except for the students from the hero course, who knew that Aizawa wouldn't say anything like that if he didn't truly mean it, which also means that Aizawa recognizes Izuku as someone worthy of his praise publicly. None of them said anything, wondering what they should do to be like Izuku. None of them had a complaint about being called inferiors to Izuku, this just meant that they had to somehow catch up to him. Well, saying that everyone was quiet would be wrong. The loud blondes of both classes were quite vocal about their opinions. Oh hey, don't you dare call me inferior, I'm the best. You hear me, I am the best. Bakugo yelled. I knew that the brats from 1A had ego, but to think their teacher will show favoritism as well. Monoma yelled. Both boys were being held back from the railing by their classmates. Thankfully their voices weren't loud enough to go beyond the area for the student body. After Aizawa had managed to make everyone's doubt clear, Midnight declared Izuku the winner again, and this time the cheers were louder and the medics finally took Ida away. Izuku looked towards the commentator booth and nodded to Aizawa gratefully, and walked towards the exit. What he didn't know was that Aizawa was looking down, gritting his teeth, thinking if he should change his decision as President Mike looked at him concerned. No. I have to do this, it's the best option. Aizawa thought and got to his mic. In a way, he started getting everyone's attention, including Izuku, who stopped and turned to listen. Aizawa continued, in a way, Midoriya is similar to All Might, he said. All Might overwhelms his opponents with superior physical abilities, and Midoriya overwhelms his opponents with skill and intelligence, he said, and turned off his mic and widened his eyes as his friend looked at him with shock. The audience was suddenly quiet, trying to process Aizawa's words. Even the students suddenly froze at hearing those words. The teachers of UA were shocked as well and looked up to the commentator booth. It didn't matter if they could see him or not. Nezu, sitting in his office watching everything, narrowed his eyes and thought, so you decided to go that far, huh, Eraserhead? Nezu had already realized the reason behind Aizawa's actions. Even Izuku Midoriya was greatly surprised by Aizawa's words. Shota, do you know what you just did? President Mike looked at him and said after turning off the microphones. I know what I did, Aizawa answered with his hands covering his face, and fingertips rubbing his eyes. Well, I don't think you understand. President Mike said back. Shota, what you just did put a huge burden on Midoriya. A student from UA is already expected to be one of the best future heroes in their future, and the one who's been defeating his competition with ease is looked at even more, and now you just compared him to All Might. Do you realize the number of people who would look out for him now, the number of citizens who would have huge expectations from him? President Mike exclaimed. Aizawa lost his cool and yelled back, "I know, damn it." He exclaimed back, surprising his friend with his rarely heard loud voice. Aizawa continued now in his normal volume, "I know the burden I put on Midoriya. I didn't want to do it, but I had to after seeing his killing intent," he said, surprising Present Mike. "His killing intent? What does that have anything to do with it?" he asked, and Aizawa looked up. "While I don't fear that skill, and it's good to have a mindset that can accept the concept of death in the work field as dangerous as hero work, for a person as young as Midoriya to have that much mental strength is not a good sign," Aizawa said. Present Mike understood what Aizawa meant, but he was still not happy with his friend's decision and said, "So you decided to put all eyes on Midoriya to make sure he's warier of his actions? Are you trying to say you think Midoriya has killed someone?" he said loudly, and Aizawa snapped his head towards him. "No, that's not what I meant. All I wanted to do was make sure, in the future I have a way to force Midoriya into therapy, and talk about any problems he could have." He spoke. "There are many more ways to do that, so why this?" "I know that's not the only reason," Present Mike asked, confused. Aizawa, hearing this, sighed and decided to come clean. "You know, All Might is close to his limit and soon he will have to retire," Aizawa said, and Present Mike nodded. Aizawa continued, "That's why this world needs to know that there are people in the younger generation they can look towards for the future, so they can know that in future there will be heroes who can keep this world safe even without All Might," Aizawa said. "And you decided to start with Midoriya for that?" Present Mike asked, and Aizawa nodded. "Yes, he is the best option. I've seen his abilities and skills at the USJ, and you've seen his abilities compared to other students as well. Not counting his physical abilities, his combat skill is still at the level of a second-year student or even a third year's. If we make him and his generation reach their full potential, then we won't have to worry about the future, and there's the League of Villains too. I'm sure they'll strike again soon. It's best to prepare the kids," Aizawa said. "Still, to put Midoriya at the front of everything, that's dangerous," Present Mike said, and Aizawa looked at him. "This world is dangerous, Mike, and this morning Midoriya decided to show himself as a leader with his speech. I'm sure he knows what he did, and if he wants to take action then he will have to face the consequences as well," Aizawa said. Present Mike looked at him, now calmer. "Still, you do know what this means. Civilians and heroes aren't the only ones watching the festival," he said, and Aizawa narrowed his eyes, understanding what his friend meant. "Yeah, I know," he said. "Villains are watching too," Aizawa finished with an edge to his tone. At that very moment, all the villains who were watching the festival in Japan and the entire world finished making their decisions about Izuku. Most had decided to ignore Izuku, believing that he was being overestimated. Some had decided to be wary of Izuku. But some had decided that Izuku was a great future threat. These were all the smart ones, and they had marked Izuku as a threat that needed to be eliminated quickly. Bounties were being decided already and would change depending on his future performance. Aizawa looked at Present Mike. Both of their expressions were serious when Aizawa spoke. "I know there are some villains who will target Midoriya now, but it's our job to prepare the next generation as well as protect them till they are ready, and I am going to make sure that happens. I will protect the kids even if it costs me my life," he said, but Present Mike wasn't surprised. "I know, and I will do the same, but I still think putting a target on Midoriya's back was not a good idea. I guess I can only help him and the other kids now. So know this, we'll get them all ready together. That's what we swore to do long ago," Present Mike said, now more optimistic, as Aizawa nodded. "You two are indeed right." They suddenly heard a third voice and turned to see Nezu standing there. "The hell are you doing here?" Aizawa asked. "Well, it's my school, I can be anywhere I want, but forget that," Nezu said. "I came here personally to tell you that I don't like the method you chose, but will accept it. I have no other option," he said, and spread his arms a little. "This just means that we have a little more work to do. After all, I won't let some villains touch one of my students, much less harm them," he said, and the other two nodded. "Now continue the festival. Look, everyone has calmed down while you two were talking. Midnight called the next students already," Nezu said, and the other two looked to see that it was true, and Present Mike welcomed them as the crowd cheered for them for another entertaining fight. Down on the stage, unfortunate for Tokiyami, he was facing an enraged Bakugo, whose quirk could create enough light to weaken Tokiyami's dark shadow quirk. Damn that green-haired bastard. A fuming Bakugo thought, how dare they compare him to All Might when I'm here. I am the only one who will surpass All Might and become the #1 hero, he thought and looked at Tokiyami with a menacing face and yelled, first I'll kick your ass and then that bastard's. He yelled as Tokiyami prepared himself to go all out. On the other side, Izuku reached the seating area for his class and saw Todoroki sitting at the back seat closest to the door, watching the match going on below. He was alone. Izuku didn't expect to see Todoroki so soon. He had a few bandages visible on his arms, hands, and head. Izuku was sure that there were more of those underneath the gym uniform he was wearing. He walked close to the boy and sat down next to him, and Todoroki looked at him for a second and then looked towards the battle again. It seems no one noticed Izuku arrive since they were sitting a bit far from the others. I didn't expect to see you come back so soon, Todoroki-san. Izuku started without taking his eyes off the match. You said I should not isolate myself, so I decided to come here when I woke up, but I didn't know how to approach them after my behavior till now. Besides, I don't know how to start a conversation, Todoroki said, also watching the match, his arms folded. You know, if you try, they will talk to you happily. They are all great people, Izuku said. Yes, I have observed that much. They are friendly. I just don't know how to start, but I have decided to begin changing myself, Todoroki said. I see. Have you decided to start with something specific to do? Izuku asked. Yes, I have decided to meet my mother again. It's been nearly 11 years since I last saw her, Todoroki replied. I see, that's great, Izuku said back. The battle below seemed to be reaching its end as Bakugo started to overpower Tokiyami with the light of his explosions. What will you do next? Todoroki asked after a little silence. About what? Izuku asked back. The thing Aizawa-sensei said. It will get you a lot of attention from all kinds of people, and everyone won't be happy. I can already think of one person, Todoroki said, indicating the last part to his father, Endeavor, who had already left after confirming that his son would recover. Yes, there will be consequences, and villains will target me, Izuku began, but I'm not worried, he said. You believe you can defeat them all? Todoroki asked. Of course I can, Izuku answered simply. You were having a hard time against me and had to use my quirks against me, and I know that I'm at the level of, at best, top 30 to 50 heroes, and that's if I use both my ice and fire to control my body temperature and give it my all, and the difference between top 10 heroes and the ones below them is dimensional. It would take all of the top 11 to 20 just to beat the 10th rank. And I know that in the top 10, only All Might can beat my father, the others don't stand a chance. How can you defeat the villains who are that strong? Todoroki asked. I'll be fine, after all, I'm strong. Well, not as strong as the top 10, but the hero rankings aren't based on power, it's based on the number of cases you solve, Izuku answered back. More than 90% of the cases are villain fights, which means the number of cases you solve is high if your power is high, so indirectly your power will decide your rank. Todoroki shot back. Still, most heroes don't have combat-related quirks like All Might and Endeavor, so, stop trying to dodge the question. Izuku was cut off by Todoroki, forcing Izuku to turn his eyes from the battle to Todoroki, but the boy didn't look back. Tell me, are you strong enough to protect yourself or not? Todoroki asked, because if you aren't, then you can rely on me, friend, he said, causing Izuku to blink. Izuku understood. He wants to offer any help he can as a thanks for helping him, Izuku thought, and then looked back at the match, with an amused smile and said, "You right, you don't know how to start a conversation," he said, and from the corner of his eyes, he saw Todoroki turned his head slightly to the other side, a little embarrassed at being read so easily. But don't worry, Izuku began, I am stronger than you have seen, I was holding back against you, Izuku answered, causing Todoroki to look at him and blink in surprise. Then he calmly looked at the match again and spoke. You told me to go all out while holding back yourself, quite contradicting, he said. How much were you holding back? He asked. A lot, Izuku answered, not giving a proper answer while hiding the fact that he wasn't even using his quirk. He continued. I see, Todoroki sighed. Looks like I have a lot of catching up to do if I want to do better, he said. So how strong are you actually? He asked, now looking at him. Izuku started thinking, that's a good question. I'm not sure as to who I should compare myself to, but if I had to say, Izuku looked at Todoroki with a confident smile. I am the strongest student in the school, Izuku said, making Todoroki widen his eyes a little in surprise. That's a bold statement, he said. It's true, Izuku replied. The way both boys were talking till now would make anyone understand that their minds were beyond their ages, thanks to their life experiences. As the conversation finished, the match was also over and Bakugo was announced as the winner. Now with Bakugo and Izuku being the confirmed finalists, Midnight announced a 10-minute break, after which the match for third place will begin between Tokiyami and Ida. Now that the match was over, the students of 1A finally looked around and most spotted Izuku and Todoroki sitting together. Seeing them, some were about to say something, but suddenly froze up a little, confusing Todoroki a bit. Seeing this, Izuku decided to answer him. They are worried that you might hate me after I defeated you in the war you declared on me this morning, Izuku said, and Todoroki blinked in surprise and then nodded his head in understanding. Izuku stood up. Everything's fine everyone. Me and Todoroki have managed me solve the problems between us. We are friends now, Izuku said, causing the others to blink, and then sighed in relief and walked closer to them. Man, I was worried that a fight might break out, Mina said. Yeah, no kidding. With how tense things were this morning between them, it's no surprise, Jiro added. That aside, how did you make that huge blast happen? I mean, Aizawa-sensei did explain how it happened, but did you know it would happen? Kaminari asked Todoroki. No, I didn't, the boy answered. While I understand the science behind it, I didn't know how cold the air needs to be, or how hot and fast the fire needs to be either. I didn't match the ratio on purpose, Todoroki said. Then how did it happen? Tsuyu asked, confused, but then a light bulb went off in everyone's head, and they looked at Izuku. Izuku, seeing all eyes on him, decided to answer them. Yes, I was the one who matched the ratio, but it was just a rough estimate that worked. Don't think even I could repeat something like that again, he answered. But how did you know the full capacity of my fire? I never used it properly before, and without knowing how hot my fire can get, you couldn't have decided an estimate on the cold required to match the ratios, Todoroki asked. Izuku looked at him and answered. During the cavalry battle, you used it for a single second to not touch the ground. It was enough for me to get an estimate, he said, causing everyone to blink in surprise and Todoroki to widen them a little. That was enough, but I wasn't even going all out. How could you get an estimate on my full power? He asked. It's my quirk. I used it to sense the amount of energy you have and put a rough estimate on it to decide how much you have to use for your quirk, Izuku answered. Wait, energy? What energy? Aren't quirks supposed to be like muscles, like work on instinct? You make it sound different, Momo asked. On that note, what even is your quirk? Jiro asked. Those questions were left unanswered when the announcement took their attention. Tenya Ida is not present. Fumikage Tokiyami wins by default. Midnight said. The class adopted looks of confusion and concern. Not present. Why is that? Ojiro asked out loud. Did you hit him too hard, Mido bro? Kirishima asked. No, recovery girl should have been able to heal him, Izuku answered. Maybe he left the stadium, Mina suggested. Whatever the case is, we shouldn't worry. There are many pro heroes here, and Ida-san is with the school authorities. I'm sure he's fine. I will contact him later, Momo said as everyone calmed down upon hearing that. Anyways, we should give Midoriya some space. His match will start in a few minutes, Hiro. Tsuyu said, and everyone agreed and walked back to their seats after wishing him luck. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the opportunity and walked to his target, Kaminari-san. Izuku called as the boy turned to see him. Now they were a few seats ahead of Todoroki and further away from the others, exactly far enough to not be heard by the others. Yeah, Kaminari asked, and Izuku smiled. I wanted to congratulate you. You almost won your match. That was a huge lie and Izuku knew it. Well, it wasn't that big of a deal, plus I lost, so, Kaminari trailed off with a light nervous chuckle. Izuku decided to play his gamble. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be better if you train harder. he said, and Kaminari's eyes widened just a little, and for a single second many different emotions reflected on them: surprise, sadness, shock, pain, and most of all, guilt. "Why, yeah, you're right. I should train harder," Kaminari said. His eyes were not focused on anything, it seemed like he was looking far away. "Okay. Need to go for my match. Bye," Izuku said, and turned to leave as Kaminari got out of his daydreaming and went to his seat. Izuku, now walking to the tunnel where he would enter, was in deep thought about his interaction with Kaminari and the emotions the boy's eyes showed. "I had guessed that something was wrong with him. I've studied psychology enough to know that Kaminari's personality is mostly an act. His body language told me that much," Izuku thought, "and that act is good. It took even me some time to see through it, and the teachers haven't seemed to notice it yet. That boy is hiding something, and he's been doing it for a long time." Izuku then remembered Kaminari's performance till now. Depending on the amount of energy, there is no limit to how much lightning his quirk can create. If used properly, he has the same level of potential as Todoroki and Bakugo, but he seems to be not using it properly. Izuku thought. But what's worrying about his reaction to our conversation is the fact that his family name is Kaminari, which means thunder, or lightning, which suggests that his electricity quirk is a family trait. Izuku thought. In the past, when quirks first appeared, wars all over the world started, but when everything was settled, the quirk wielders were given many benefits as an apology, and changing names was a small one of them. Many people made their family names a reference to their quirks, and this was the source of Izuku's worry for his classmate. The family name, Kaminari, referencing his quirk, suggests that the electricity quirk is a family trait, and the fact that Kaminari isn't using his quirk to its full potential and his reaction to Izuku telling him to train harder could suggest that he was already being told that by someone, and may even be under emotion and mental stress which he was hiding with his funny and goofy personality. Izuku looked up to see the tunnel exit and stopped and waited for his name to be called. Again he started thinking, his act is almost perfect. How long has he been hiding behind that mask of fake personality? However long it's been, I have to help him, Izuku thought. Failure to meet family expectations in the hero world is not that simple. Kaminari might be a neglected child, or maybe always under pressure from his family to do better, and worst case scenario, his eyes narrowed, he might even be abused, and not like Todoroki who was trained harshly. Kaminari might be actually physically abused for being weaker than his family's expectations. For just a second, Izuku's eyes turned a little colder at the possibility. Izuku took a deep breath, calmed himself and sighed. I shouldn't jump to conclusions, I'll have to wait and find things out first, he thought, and looked forward when his name was called by Present Mike. He moved thinking, but being prepared for the worst case scenario is better. And now we call upon the finalists of the sports festival. The battle of the top 2 first years begins now, Present Mike said loudly as the audience cheered. The hot-headed boy WHO haven't been able to take the top spot yet. Will he keep his word of being the winner? We will know that soon. Welcome Katsuki Bakugo. With the enraged expression Bakugo had, he didn't like his intro. On the other side we have the top spot of the festival. Will he keep his winning streak and take the trophy home, or is going to lose? Let's see it for ourselves. Here enters Izuku Midoriya. The audience roared again as both boys made their way onto the stage. Bakugo looked at him and scowled. I'm gonna beat you here and let everyone know that I'm the best, he shouted. Izuku narrowed his eyes but didn't say anything, enraging Bakugo even more. Midnight looked at the boys and asked, are you two ready? Yes, Izuku replied calmly. Just start the damn thing, Bakugo yelled. All right then, Midnight said, begin. As soon as she said that, Izuku fell into the basic martial arts stance. Bakugo used his quirk to propel himself toward Izuku. Take this, Bakugo yelled as he threw an open palm right hook. Again, Izuku thought calmly, remembering that Bakugo used the same move to start all his fights. Izuku reached Bakugo's right wrist with his left hand before the explosion ignited and pulled his hand towards his own right side, making the explosion harmless to him, while simultaneously blocking Bakugo's left hand with Bakugo's own right arm. As Bakugo turned his eyes to look at his palm, Izuku used his distraction and threw a left kick to his chin. However, Bakugo noticed this and pulled his head back in him, yanked his arm free, and made distance. As Izuku ran after him, still both in running motion, Izuku threw a jab, which Bakugo dodged by leaning to his right and saw Izuku's abdomen open and thrust his right hand with an explosion. Izuku noticed this and kicked his arm away with his left leg in time, and both jumped back and made distance. Bakugo had a serious expression. He realized he had to be more serious than before. Izuku maintained a stoic expression as he watched Bakugo. The audience was at the edge of their seats. Suddenly both boys charged. Bakugo threw a left hook with an explosion, but Izuku ducked under it and threw a right hook to his abdomen, but Bakugo blocked it with his left leg. Izuku in his crouched position transitioned his right hook to grabbing Bakugo's left leg with his right hand and quickly stood up and threw a left punch to his gut as Bakugo was thrown off balance. Bakugo landed on his back but used his quirk to get back up quickly. Izuku didn't give him any more time and threw a left side kick, connecting to his gut, and pushing him a few feet back. "Tell me," Izuku called, getting Bakugo's attention. "Tell me, Bakugo-san, why do you want to win?" Izuku questioned. Bakugo looked at Izuku like he was an idiot. "What the hell do you mean? Who doesn't want to win?" he answered back. "Still, there's always a motive for doing something. What is yours?" Izuku asked. "Because I was born better than everyone. Everyone always told me I was born for greatness, so I am doing what's natural. I will become the best. Even better than All Might. I will become the strongest," Bakugo exclaimed and charged Izuku. Hearing the answer, Izuku's eyes narrowed. "So it's just to prove that you're the most gifted? Do you really believe that no one in this world can be better than you?" Izuku said and charged him. "Of course not. I'll prove it after beating you and then All Might," Bakugo exclaimed and threw a left palm thrust to Izuku's face, but Izuku used his own right palm to deflect it and backhand punched Bakugo to the face, and flowed it with a jab to the throat, making him cough a little. Izuku kicked the back of Bakugo's right knee with his left leg, forcing the boy to his left knee. Izuku grabbed his collar and punched him in the face, making his nose bleed a little. Bakugo gritted his teeth and used his explosion to force his back a few steps and got up to his feet again. "If you truly believe that you're the most gifted, then you're wrong," Izuku said, getting his attention. "Huh," Bakugo gave a scowl. Izuku continued, "In our class, there is one person who is much weaker compared to you but has the potential that rivals yours and Todoroki's, but he hasn't tapped into it yet, so I will bring it out. In 6 months you will see his rate of progress to be greater than yours and Todoroki's, and you will acknowledge him to be your rival Katsuki." Bakugo, Izuku said, taking a quick side glance at Kaminari. Gritting his teeth in rage, Bakugo charged Izuku and yelled, "Just shut up, you extra." As Bakugo got close to him with his explosions and extended his right hand forward for an attack, Izuku jumped back a little, and while in that motion he grabbed Bakugo's wrist with his left hand and twisted outwards, making the attack useless, and used his right hand to uppercut him in the guts, forcing him on the ground, as he held his gut in pain and puked. Izuku looked at him and said, "Bakugo-san, your potential is great, but you cage yourself with your ignorance. You won't grow stronger if you stay that way. Only when you accept others and acknowledge them will you progress, and I will wait for that day." Izuku walked towards him as Bakugo raised his head a little and looked at him with rage. "Don't waste that potential. The world can appreciate another strong hero." Izuku finished and kicked him in the face, knocking him out. Midnight looked at the outcome and announced, "Katsuki Bakugo is unable to continue the fight. Izuku Midoriya is the winner," she announced as the audience cheered. "Amazing. For the first time in UA's history, someone will all their matches without fail. Give it up for Izuku Midoriya." Present Mike yelled as the crowd cheered even louder. Shiro Hiroshi was jumping for joy. "Yes, the kid won. He really won the whole thing," he yelled. Right now that man was on cloud 9, he could see himself swimming in money. Izuku sighed. "Well, here comes the hard part," he thought. About an hour later, the prize ceremony started. "And now I present to you all the winners of the sports festival," Midnight said as the crowd cheered again. 3 platforms rose from the ground, all uneven in height. Left on the lowest with 3rd place written on it in bronze color. Tokiyami was on it. The right one was interesting, with 2nd place written on it in silver color. Bakugo was tied to a pole, with his mouth covered and hands bound. He was trying to yell something. He was still angry. The one in the center was the highest, with first place written on it in gold color. Izuku Midoriya was standing calmly, looking forward. Once everyone took in their forms, midnight started, and now I invite the hero who, her words were cut off when a loud voice came. I am here. Everyone looked up to see a figure enter from the sky, and land in front of the students, and the crowd started chanting his name. You ruined my speech. Midnight pouted. All Might blinked. I am sorry, I didn't realize that, he said and walked towards the three students. Well, you're here, so let's start the presentation, Midnight said and handed him a tray with 3 medals. All Might took the bronze medal, walked to Tokiyami and said, Great work, young Tokiyami, he said as he put the medal on his neck and continued, but you still have a lot of training to do in order to reach your best, so work hard and don't give up, he said as he hugged the boy gently. I will make sure to work hard, All Might, Tokiyami replied as he looked at the bronze medal on his neck. All Might then moved to Bakugo. Well, this seems to be a bit much, he said and took off Bakugo's mouth bindings, and immediately Bakugo started yelling. Let me go, he screamed, hey you green-haired bastard. Fight me again, I want a rematch, he yelled, but Izuku ignored him. Now, young Bakugo, you have lost your match. If you want first place then wait for the year's tournament, All Might said, and Bakugo looked at him glaring. I don't care about that piece of crap medal. I just wanna beat him. I don't care where it happens, I wanna prove that I'm the best. I don't need anyone to get stronger and that mushy stuff. This is about my pride. Bakugo yelled. Pride? More like your ego, Tokiyami thought with a sweat drop. All Might looked at Bakugo understanding. I see, if you just want a battle then I'm sure you will eventually get a chance in your hero training, just be patient, he said and began to put the silver place medal on his neck. The hell, I don't want this. Keep that thing away from me. Bakugo yelled and didn't let All Might put it on his neck, so All Might forced it in his mouth, forcing Bakugo to bite the thing in his mouth like a dog. Ignoring Bakugo's yell, All Might walked to Izuku and said, Congratulations on getting first place, young man. Good job, All Might said and put the gold medal on his neck. Thank you, Sensei, Izuku said as he received a hug from All Might. All Might turned and took a mic from Midnight and announced, Everyone please give a round of applause for the winners of the sports festival. All Might shouted and the audience listened. Good job, kids. Congratulations. You all were so cool. As the audience finished cheering, Izuku walked to All Might, causing the man to turn to him. Is there anything I can do for you, young man? All Might asked. Izuku looked at him as he took off the bracelet on his wrist and reached for his neck and took off the thin collar and said, Yes, please hand these back to Principal Nezu for me, Izuku said as he handed them to All Might. What are these? The man asked, confused, but when he took a look at them, he realized and said, Wait, are these? Izuku cut him off. Yes, these are the quirk-canceling equipment I have been wearing the entire day, Izuku said purposefully loud enough to reach the mic in All Might's hands and let everyone hear it, shocking them all. Silence. That was what happened. Everyone was quiet, trying to process what Izuku just said. Aizawa rose from his seat in shock and accidentally muttered in the mic what he was thinking. He won the festival without his quirk. And with that, like a dame broke, everyone started talking to each other about how it was possible. Everyone was shocked, obviously, including the students and Izuku's classmates. He wasn't using his quirk. Then how did he do all that? Hiroshima asked. No one in general. How did he use his quirk to measure my full power if he couldn't access it? Todoroki brought up the question. He looked calm but he was shocked too. Luckily All Might asked a similar question. Did you really not have access to your quirk the entire day? Well, I was able to use it during the 1-hour break, but not during matches or rounds, Izuku answered. I see, he must have used his quirk to measure my power when we talked during the break, Todoroki thought, happy that his question was answered somehow. But he was still shocked, and it was visible. The strength and speed Izuku displayed were his physical abilities alone and no quirk, yet his ice attack could not keep up with Izuku and he was slower than him in the obstacle race. Obviously he had a lot of training to do. Bakugo was shocked. Yes, he wasn't angry, he was shocked. How was this possible? He lost to someone who wasn't even using his quirk. Just how strong was Izuku? For the first time, Bakugo was too shocked to yell. Aizawa raised his voice and asked through the mic and asked, "How did you get those pieces of equipment, Midoriya?" He asked. Izuku looked in Aizawa's direction and said, "I made a bet with Principal Nezu, you can ask him," he said, and Aizawa snapped his head back to look at Nezu. Finally, he gave me an opening, Nezu thought and walked to the mic. "It's true, young Midoriya and I were just playing a little game. He said that if he wins the festival without his quirk then I will have to do something specific for him. So to make sure he flowed his deal properly I provided him with those quirk-canceling accessories, nothing more than that." Nezu said. "Now you all may be wondering what can be worth such a bet. Well, I am glad to announce that the 39th UA Student Council exams will be held very soon, and if we have a winner then UA will meet its third Student Council president in history," he said, as many eyes blinked at that in surprise, taking attention off the fact that Izuku wasn't using his quirk. Many people knew what the post meant. All Might wondered if the title he couldn't once claim would be claimed by anyone this time. Endeavor, who was watching to see who had won, was surprised that the title he once held was again on the line. Best Jeanist was feeling the same as Endeavor. Good job changing the topic, Principal, Izuku thought. Aizawa sighed, "These two are giving me a headache." However, Izuku wasn't done. There was one last thing he needed to say. "Still, everyone must be wondering how I achieved my feats and physical abilities," Izuku said into the mic All Might had, getting everyone's attention again. "It's simple. I used an ancient martial arts technique," he revealed. "Martial arts," all of them repeated in their heads. "Martial arts can achieve that much?" All Might muttered out the question many were thinking. "Yes, you can achieve these heights, but only with practice and dedication to it on all levels," Izuku replied. However, he began, getting everyone's attention again, "I'm glad I didn't use my quirk, because if I had used my quirk, honestly this tournament would have been too easy," he said, shocking and surprising many with his choice of words, but he didn't just stop there. Izuku looked at All Might and now with his voice slightly deeper and filled with power, he said, "All Might, just like you're the strongest in your 6th generation." Izuku turned to face the audience and to an extension, "The world. While I'm not the strongest in this world, I know one thing for sure. Throughout this world no one in my 8th generation soars as high as me," he declared. Chapter 4.8 That evening, after Izuku's declaration, he left the stage, and after getting out of sight, he quickly packed his things, changed his clothes in the lockers, and left the stadium as soon as he could, because he didn't want to give any answers to anyone. The next 2 days were going to be for the 2nd and 3rd year students, and the rest of the week was a holiday. The next classes were on Monday, which meant Izuku could finally start his private investigation on the League of Villains. However, right now he was in a cafe with Hiroshi, and after about 2 hours of talking, they had finally signed a contract. "Okay, here are your copies of the contract, and here are mine," Hiroshi said as he handed him the contract. "Good, now we have a month-long contract. You know the details." "The details. Work starts from May," he said, and Izuku nodded in confirmation. Hiroshi continued, "But seriously, Midoriya-san, I didn't expect you to actually win the whole tournament. You were amazing. My superiors are so happy," he complimented. "Please, I wasn't that great," Izuku said with a smile. Hiroshi laughed. "Oh no, you don't. Stop being modest. The speech you gave at the beginning, and then won all the rounds, and in the end, you revealed that you were not even using your quirk but some ancient kung fu," he said. "Martial arts, not kung fu," Izuku tried to correct him with a sweat drop. Details, Hiroshi muttered. "And then that badass thing you said at the end, you basically called yourself the strongest teenager in the whole world after winning one of the most competitive events in the world. You're definitely getting popular," he said. "Yeah, hey, I think I should leave, it's quite late," Izuku said, trying to escape the conversation. Hiroshi looked at him. "Ah, sure kid, tell me if there's anything you need, I'll try to help," he said. "Okay, thanks, I'll take my leave now," Izuku said as he took the contract and walked out of the cafe. Izuku sighed. The things I did today will affect many people, Izuku thought. Yes, he was absolutely right. Somewhere in Musudafu City. Katsuki Bakugo was in his garden, throwing punches in the air as he remembered Izuku's face and his words. I don't care what that martial arts crap he has, he thought as he remembered how he was outskilled in his battle. I don't care what his quirk is, he thought as he went through more moves he could have used to block or dodge Izuku's attacks. The next time I fight him, he's going down. First him and then All Might, he yelled in his mind. Even after the tiring day, Bakugo was training in his garden intensely, proven by the fact his shirt was drenched in his sweat. Katsuki Bakugo was using his rage to grow stronger. In another part of the city, Shoto Todoroki was preparing everything he would need to meet his mother, everything, being the things he would say or talk to his mother and how he would face her after all the time that had passed. Todoroki looked at his hands and thought, I will fix my mistakes, no matter what, and I will start by making it up to my family. I will become the hero I want to be. He then looked towards the open sky. Thank you, Izuku Midoriya, my first real friend. The boy was on the right track in life now. Hitoshi Shinso was on his way to his home. He knew his mother was waiting for him, and would congratulate him for whatever progress he made in the festival. However, his mind was somewhere else. That martial arts Midoriya-san talked about, I wonder if he will teach it to me. I will ask him Monday. My journey starts on Monday, he thought, but then stopped in his tracks, looked at his hands. No. He exclaimed in his mind, slapping his face, and thought, I will go home and research on everything I need to put on muscle. The diet, the exercises, and everything else, and ask Midoriya-san for help on Monday. My journey will start now, he thought. This time he would meet his mother's welcome with a real smile, because this time he has real hope and resolve. Somewhere else in the city. Denki Kaminari did not want to go back home after losing in the festival, but he had to, or his family will begin to look for him. He looked at his hands. I know I am weak, he thought. I know I am a disappointment, but I don't want to give up yet. I need to get stronger somehow. He then remembered Izuku talking about his martial arts and his eyes widened a little. Yeah, maybe I can ask Midoriya-san for help. Yes, he might help me. Even if I can't learn his special martial arts, maybe he can teach me normal hand-to-hand combat. He decided he would talk to Izuku and headed back home. Hi. Nezu was in his office sitting on his chair, thinking about the defeat Izuku had given him, and it was not about winning the sports festival. You did very well against me, young Midoriya. I didn't even realize the trap you laid out till the very end. Nezu thought. He realized long ago that I was onto his lies about the memory loss and created a trap for me. Izuku's plan was to publicly tell everyone about the deal Izuku and Nezu had made. While the public wouldn't care about what happened, some people in the Heroes Association and the UA's board of directors hate Nezu for his intelligence and want to take him down for trying to interfere in their corrupted plans. Izuku's plan was to let everyone know that Nezu had made a bet with a student for organizing the Student Council President exam, something that should be organized by just asking. Now Nezu's enemies will make a fuss about it, and combined with the fact that the League of Villains had managed to infiltrate the school and put 20 students in danger, they're going to try everything they can to strip Nezu of his power and authority. Nezu looked forward and thought, well, at least he was kind enough to give me something to fight with, he thought. Indeed, Izuku Midoriya had used specific words when telling everyone about the deal, saying, I made a bet with Principal Nezu. This gives the illusion that Izuku was the one who initiated the bet, and now Nezu can make any number of lies and say that he was just teasing his student, and intended to start the exam no matter what the outcome of the festival would be. Looking back, Izuku had made a very detailed plan against Nezu to make sure Nezu didn't have the time to investigate Izuku, as now he would be busy handling his problems against the higher-ups. Thinking all that, now the question in Nezu's mind was, when did Izuku come up with the plan? One would think the plan started when Izuku was talking to Nezu yesterday, when the deal was made, or sometime after that. Well, that person would be wrong. As Nezu finished checking something on the computer, he couldn't help but laugh a little as he realized when the plan was made. If Izuku's intention was to just start the exam for the president position, then he could have just emailed Nezu. Having written proof that he asked Nezu to start the exam would mean that Nezu could have refused to do it, and no deal would have been formed between the two. However, Izuku decided to talk face to face instead. Why? Because he knew from his previous interactions with Nezu that Nezu would try to dig for information if he had the chance. Which means, Nezu started laughing. He laughed hysterically at being defeated and outsmarted so early. Still laughing, Nezu thought, he made the meeting 2 weeks ago, the day he woke up after the USJ attack, and made a plan against me. Nezu calmed down. 2 weeks ago, when he booked the meeting, he already knew that I would try something and played his cards right. I was outsmarted 2 weeks ago, I can't believe it. Nezu thought. Indeed, Principal Nezu had underestimated Izuku and had paid the price for it. However, now I know what you are capable of, and next time I won't let my guard down, my dear student, Nezu thought. He was enjoying this game of intelligence he was playing with Izuku. After all, he had never met someone as smart as Izuku. Good thing he still remembered that Izuku was his student and they were ultimately on the same side. One thing was for sure, between the higher-ups and the League of Villains, Nezu wouldn't have enough time to play with Izuku for some time. Izuku Midoriya was walking to the hotel he was staying at. He had short-listed some property agents in the most criminally active parts of the town, as well as some who work in the safer parts of the city. Izuku plans on using a small one-room apartment as a secret makeshift office or base while renting an actual apartment to live in near the school. Alongside that, he has managed to notice something that could lead him to the League of Villains. Out of the about 100 villains that were arrested at the USJ, only a few names were released to the public, and many of them have some small-time criminal history in the western part of the town, mentioned all over the news. The crimes that were mentioned suggested that their threat level was more of thugs than villains. Izuku closed the news app on his phone and looked forward while walking. Small criminals like these don't get scouted out for big missions like the USJ attack. These guys are usually all gathered by one person who has connections in many places. I will call this unknown person X, Izuku thought. This means that League of Villains contacted X and asked him or her to provide them with many thugs to fight students while the Nomu take care of All Might and other pro-heroes. That must have been their plan. Izuku theorized the League's plan, and continued, so if I track down the leads and find out who this X is, then I can get my lead to the League of Villains. He thought. Now that I've successfully pulled Nezu out of my way, I don't have to worry about him looking into me as much as before, he thought. The future is going to be difficult, I can guess that much, and depending on what I do know will decide how many innocent people will die. I have to make my move against the League of Villains fast and then take down the corrupted members of the Hero Association and government all over the world before they harm the innocent, he thought. I'll stop all the villains, corrupted heroes, and members of the association all over the world. I will take them down before their actions kill more innocent people. I'll stop them all no matter how far I have to go. He paused as a darker thought came to his mind. After all, my hands are already soaked in blood. On Tuesday, April 23rd, the day after the Izuku Midoriya was sitting inside the office of a run-down-looking building, across from a shady-looking man in a black business suit. The man had sunglasses on, he has short black hair, and a slight beard that needed trimming, with a cigarette in his mouth. His name is Zenu. Izuku picked to find him a property for his personal projects. Someone who was unimportant but could get the job done and be forgotten. He has multiple small properties he rents out to people, that's basically his business. So, what brings a kid to my place? He asked uninterestedly. The man had clearly not been watching the news or the sports festival. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He knew how to get these kinds of people interested. I'll cut to the chase. Get me a small underground studio, 12 by 12 feet with an attached bathroom and electricity, anywhere in the west side of the city. I'll pay hard cash, he spoke. Zenu narrowed his eyes thinking Izuku was messing around. I don't have time for this kid. His words were cut short when Izuku picked up a suitcase from his feet and opened it on the table, making the man's eyes widen. The suitcase was filled with money and the man couldn't believe that a kid like Izuku had that much money in cash with him. He looked at Izuku. How much is this? He asked. About 100,000 yen. This is the rent, now can we get started? Izuku asked sharply. Oh, of course, sir. Let's talk. I have a place you can have, with all the things you asked for, he said as he pulled out a map and showed some properties. Getting 100,000 yen in cash on the spot was something good for someone like Zenu. For the next 30 minutes, Izuku looked through some different options and finally stopped on one. He narrowed his eyes in thought. This seems good. It's a basement property, 12 by 12 feet, which means about the size of an average master bedroom, with a small bathroom. The place is in the middle of western Musatafa, which is the most criminal active area in the city. Perfect for my objectives, he thought and looked at the man. I want this one, he said, and Zenu looked at him. Huh, are you sure? That's the most dangerous area in the city, he said. I know what I want. Now where is it? Izuku said, showing a more cold and aggressive approach. Since people like Zenu are always dealing with criminals, there is no point in showing kindness. Zenu scoffed and took the money suitcase and took it to a room, most likely his locked, and came back with some keys. Let's go, the place is at walking distance, he said as he walked out of the office and Izuku followed. When they stepped out of the building, the state of the western part was already on full display. As they walked towards the studio apartment, they saw streets littered with trash, and homeless people on the side of the street. If you looked down the dark alley, you could see shady men talking to each other. Little kids with rag-like clothes were present as well, and women with revealing clothes were around too. When they were walking, many would walk up to Zenu asking if he had any work for them, to which he replied, I am with a customer right now, and the people would take a glance at Izuku as if sizing him and then leave. While walking, Izuku got many looks from everyone, most likely because of his clothes, since he was the only one wearing fashionable ones, the same ones he wore when he went to talk to Nezu on Sunday. This would have made him the target of possible pickpocketers, but his natural aura of power told everyone to now offend him, and to add to that, Izuku to his credit stayed quiet and maintained a stern expression and looked forward the whole time. After about 20 minutes of walking, they finally reached a building. They walked to the back of it, and during that, Izuku noticed some small cheap vent at the bottom edge of the building that seemed unnecessary. They got to the back to see a door and opened it to see some stairs and walked down. It's the last room on the left, Zenu said as they walked there. Zenu opened the door with some keys and stepped back so Izuku could take a look inside. When Izuku peeked in, he saw a dusty room, the same size the description had said. Izuku walked in, looked around quietly, and took a peek into the bathroom to check it as well. His eyes landed on the exhaust system and his eyes narrowed for a moment. He walked back to Zenu. I like the place, he said. I'll take it. You have the money, so when can I move in? He asked. You can move at this moment, he said, and Izuku looked at him blankly. Zenu looked at him amused. What? You didn't expect any legal documents or paper to sign, right? This is the western area of Mustafa. The only paper that has any value here are the notes of cash, he said with an amused smirk as he leaned on the door frame. Izuku looked at him coldly and walked out of the door. I am overpaying you, so get this place cleaned by tomorrow, he said as he walked towards the staircase as Zenu nodded. Izuku stopped right before climbing the stairs and turned his head halfway as Zenu looked at him questioningly. However, he froze up because of the look he received. Izuku looked at him with one eye, giving a look of complete apathy and coldness, and said, if anyone finds out that I met you or that you rented me this place, know this. He paused as he narrowed his eyes still with a cold look in them and continued, absolutely no one will ever find out where you disappeared to. I will leave no trace of your existence itself, understood? He said. Zenu couldn't do anything but nod meekly as Izuku turned and left. Zenu fell to his knees. Who the hell did I get myself involved with? He thought fearfully. Outside, Izuku was walking towards the front of the building when he stopped and looked to his right. Where he had seen the cheap vent earlier, positioned right in front of his room. He crouched and checked to see if anyone was watching. When he confirmed that no one was around, he tossed the coin in the vent and walked away thinking. The inside of the room didn't have the same kind of vent, nor did the bathroom, and their positioning suggests that the vent is for my room, which means they're in a hidden room. Zenu doesn't seem like a smart person, so he himself probably doesn't know about it, and having small hidden room is common for places in criminally active areas like this. Izuku put his hands in his pocket as he walked away. Well, I'll check the place myself, and getting it clean was important anyways, so it's a win-win for me. He thought and left to another side of the area about 3 kilometers away. The area wasn't that different from before, but more mutant-based quirk users were present here. He walked into a small alley and walked up to 3 people, with bird-based quirks. They looked at him suspiciously when Izuku started. "Excuse me, can you tell me where Kazami-san's house is?" he said. Hearing that, they cracked an amused smile, and the one leaning against the wall looked at Izuku and said, "Why? Did he rip you off too?" he asked. "Maybe, maybe not. I need to go to his house. Can you tell me where he is?" Izuku replied, keeping a neutral tone. "Well, you won't find him there. The guy was arrested, and he'll be in jail for a long time now," he said, and the group started laughing lightly at the end. "If he borrowed money from you, then forget it. You won't get it back, but if you still want to know where his house is, then I'll tell you. But be warned, kid, a few people around this area want their money back from him," the guy warned, and Izuku nodded. After getting Kazami's address, Izuku walked to a bad-looking street stall with a scary-looking shop owner and ordered some fried rice and dumplings with some bottles of water, and even managed to get some milk. All the food was packed sloppily, and there was a clear lack of hygiene, something that could only be found in an area like this. Ignoring anyone calling him for a little chat, and any other person, Izuku walked through different alleys and finally got to an area that looked like a slump with many small wooden houses that were unfit for living, and their building spots were unorganized. Izuku ignored the few people who looked at him and walked to one of the run-down houses and knocked on the almost broken door. Soon a female's panicked voice answered, "Who's there?" "Look, I don't have any money right now, but I will try to pay the debt soon. Just give me a little more time, please." She sounded afraid, and there were some muffled voices of a young child too asking the women what was happening. Hearing this, Izuku closed his eyes as a sigh escaped his lips and his presence became bearable again as he said, now in a normal calming voice, "I am not here for money, ma'am. I need to talk to you about what your husband did." Quiet. No answer came, but then some footsteps were heard as the woman approached the door. "Are you a hero? Or from the police maybe?" she asked from behind the door. "Neither," Izuku answered, and she peeked from the door to see his face, and her eyes widened at his next words. "I am one of the students of UA High, the one you defeated your husband at the USJ attack and the reason he got arrested." About 5 minutes later they were inside the house. Izuku was sitting on the ground on a zabuton, a Japanese square cushion people sit on. Izuku was talking in the side of the house. The place was run down. There were some leaks in the walls and the roof. The floor was creaking. Some windows were broken. The check stove and everything else was on the ground. The bed was basically some mattresses on the floor, and the whole show was just a little bigger than a master bedroom. The woman, who was Kazami's wife, was sitting across from him after serving him a glass of water. I'm sorry, but this is all I can offer you," she said apologetically. "There is no need to apologize for that. I am grateful for your thoughtfulness alone," Izuku answered. The woman seemed to have calmed down a little by now. She was wearing a red shirt and black pants, something you would wear in your house. She had the face of a green lizard, most likely because of her quirk. Izuku noticed a little boy with a crocodile face, a dirt white shirt, and black shorts peeking out from the corner of the room. From under some blankets, a baby was sleeping next to the boy. "So may I ask why you're here, sir?" she asked nervously, and Izuku looked at her. "Don't worry, I am not here with any intention to harm you or your children for what your husband did at the USJ. Mrs. Kazami," Izuku said, and she let out a light sigh of relief. Izuku continued, "I must say I am surprised. You don't seem to hate me for what I did to your husband. Because of me he is in jail and you seem to suffer the consequences," Izuku said. The woman got a concerned look on her face. "No, I can't blame you for what you did. My husband was the one to attack you and your classmates. How can I blame anyone but him?" she said. "I still can't believe my husband would go so far for money that he would harm children," she said, looking down, shame on her face for her husband's actions. Izuku noticed this and said, "There is no need for you to feel guilty for what he did, ma'am. The women nodded quietly. A question came to her mind and she asked, "How did you know where to find me?" She asked. "The media tried to interview you on a street nearby after the USJ incident. I saw one of the closed shops' names and found the area. Then I just had to ask some locals for the address and got here," Izuku answered, and the women nodded thoughtfully. Before the conversation continued, a voice from the boy's stomach came a bit loudly, getting the attention. Izuku looked at the boy, who again hid under the blankets. Seeing this, Izuku got up and turned to the boy while signaling his mother that everything was fine. "I expected that much when I got here," he thought. Izuku took a few steps and got to the bundle of blankets as the boy peeked out a little and then quickly hid again. Izuku smiled and said, "It's fine, I won't hurt you, come out now." The boy peeked out and looked at him, then at his mom, who told him that Izuku was safe. The boy finally left the blankets and got out. "What's your name, little one?" Izuku asked as he crouched down to meet the boy's level. "My name is Tora. I'm 5 years old," the boy answered cutely while showing 5 fingers. Izuku smiled again and asked, "I see, Tora-chan, why did you hide from me?" "Papa said that if a stranger comes then I should hide or they might hurt me," the boy answered innocently, and Izuku nodded, remembering that the thugs told him that Kazami had some debt to pay. "Well, it's fine, I won't hurt you or your family, okay?" Izuku said. "Okay," the boy replied, quickly believing what Izuku said. Izuku looked at him. "Now tell me, are you hungry?" Izuku asked. The boy took a glance at his mother, but Izuku quickly made him look back at him. But before the boy answered, his stomach gave in and made a sound again, and the boy finally nodded shyly. Izuku smiled warmly and showed him the bag of food he had brought and turned to the mother and said, "Ma'am, I brought some food for you guys. There is some milk for the little one too. If she is old enough to drink it, please have it," he said. The mother's eyes widened slightly and she waved her hands. "Please, I couldn't accept that, especially not after what my husband did." She was cut off. "I brought this special for you guys. Please accept this or it will be a waste," Izuku said, and after a few seconds, the lady sighed and gratefully accepted. A few minutes later, the family was eating the food Izuku brought. He himself had refused to eat any when he was offered some. So, Izuku began, getting the women's attention. "Do you know why your husband became a criminal? Surely a normal job would have helped more than this, especially with having young children," he said, and the women sighed and took a deep breath. "You have helped us a lot, so at least I want to tell you how things became like this," she said, and began to explain her and her husband's story. About 7 years ago, she and Kazami came to the city from a small town as newlyweds, hoping to start a new life and make a family here. However, even though both were well educated, neither got a job anywhere as they were refused due to different unreasonable reasons. At first, they were confused as to why, but soon realized that their mutation-type quirks were the reason why this happened. She looked like a lizard and Kazami looked like a crocodile. The hate for mutant quirk users, which seems to have disappeared in the public's eyes, was still present in the shadows and people were being harmed by it. As time passed, Kazami had no option but to steal from others to stay alive, as they didn't even have the money to go back home. At first, things didn't seem that bad. Kazami would steal some food and snatch purses or pickpockets, but when Tora was born the needs increased, which forced the man to do more threatening jobs. As time passed, he became more involved when eventually the need to feed a wife and 2 children forced him to join the USJ attack to make some big cash. At one point while telling the story, she had started crying silently as the kids fell asleep after eating. The family hadn't eaten properly in days, so the mother was relieved that her children weren't starving now. After hearing the Izuku came to a decision, and said, "Ma'am, pack your bags, you and your children are going back to your hometown to your parents, and I will give you the money for travel," he said, shocking her. What? And no, I can't accept that much help. She couldn't form proper words. "You won't be doing it for free," Izuku said, surprising her. "And not for free, but what can I give you?" she asked. Izuku narrowed his eyes slightly. "Information. Your husband was recruited by someone about the attack on USJ. I want you to tell me who," Izuku said, and thought, "The main reason why I came here, to get information on the person." Mrs. Kazami was surprised but nodded and started thinking. I think I remember Kazami-kun telling me about a man who has a building in northern Tokyo." That's the man who gets him big jobs. Apparently, he is a big shot," she said, and started to explain about the location of the building that serves as a base for that man. Izuku listened quietly and memorized every detail about the possible person who was now identified as a male. After the talk and a little more convincing were finished, Izuku stood up, followed by Mrs. Kazami. "I will wait outside for you to finish packing your belongings. Please hurry up," Izuku said, but Mrs. Kazami still had one worry. "But what about the people my husband owes money?" she asked. "Don't worry about those. I believe Kazami-san didn't take money from any big criminal. If he did, then he could have taken enough to not have to live here," Izuku said, and the women nodded. Izuku continued, "Once you leave this place, the people will never find you in the countryside, so leave quickly and don't worry about the debt. I will take care of that," he said as he walked out. "Take care? What do you mean by that?" Mrs. Kazami asked, confused and worried. Izuku turned his head slightly and answered, "The people your husband took money from most likely got them illegally. As a hero student, I will stop them my way," he said, and walked outside as Mrs. Kazami started packing what she needed to take as Izuku waited outside. As Izuku stood outside thinking, in the USJ attack everyone got what they deserved, the villains were defeated, the heroes were respected, and the students were praised. He clenched his fist, but in all of this, why did these children have to starve? And how many more are there staring out there right now? He questioned himself, and the look in his eyes hardened. Kazami's actions caused his family to starve, just like that my actions will decide what happens to those around me. Actions always have consequences. One person's choices will always affect those around them. That's the way the world is. A rule of nature no one escapes. Eventually, the family was ready and they made their way to the train station, making sure no one saw them as Izuku made sure they got there safely. After waiting for the train to arrive, she started crying as she hugged Izuku suddenly in a motherly embrace, startling him. "May God bless you. I hope there are more heroes like you in the future," she said. "Don't worry, there will be," Izuku said back, and then let her go with her sleeping children. As he watched the train leave, he thought, "I can't help everyone like this. In order to solve the problem of quirk discrimination, I have to make a move eventually," Izuku thought. He walked out of the station thinking, "But for now I have to take care of this place Mrs. Kazumi told me about." He thought, "A secret base disguised as an office building, I will have to visit it tonight. I better get my equipment ready," he thought, and left. 3 hours later, Izuku came back to his base. He looked around to see the place was clean and there was the key for the place on the ground, and picked it up thinking, "How irresponsible. Well, let's see if there is a secret room here." He started searching the place for any hidden entrances. He checked the walls, the floor, any switchboard, and plugs for anything, but found nothing. He went in to check the bathroom, which was now much cleaner, after looking around and finding nothing, and was about to leave when he noticed the floor made up of small tiles. He narrowed his eyes and crouched down to check it, tracking his finger along the gaps in the tiles. We stuck his nail in a corner and tried lifting it up. When he did, he found out that he could lift the tile. Seeing this, Izuku removed it completely and the tiles came off completely, like talking of a lid. It was a trap door, and there were some steep stairs that went down about 10 feet. Izuku carefully went down and got to the bottom, and entered a room as big as the one above. "Well, that's convenient," he thought as he looked around to see it had a lot of dust in it. Izuku sighed, "Well, I better get to work. I have a lot to buy today," he thought as he started working on his self-assigned mission in Tokyo. Izuku spent the rest of the day buying things he needed, like some weapons from people or shops that wouldn't keep any records. He later went to the main city to buy a computer for the base and bought it on a lease. He would pay full price as soon as his income from his model career came on the 1st of May. The rest of the day was spent buying things, and the next day organized everything in the base. Chapter -5.2. Wednesday, April 24th. After organizing the base, he made his way to the place Mrs. Kazami told him about. That night around 11 p.m., in the northern part of the always busy city of Tokyo, Izuku Midoriya stood on a rooftop looking down on a white office building. He was wearing a black hoodie on top of a black high-neck compressed shirt, black gloves, with a black mask that covered the lower half of his face. He has black pants with black boots with no pattern on the soles, a black utility belt with 5 pouches, and a holster-like kunai pouch on his right thigh. He had a small backpack on his back. His eyes were the only visible parts about him, the rest was covered well. While these weapons are often associated with ninjas, kunai and shuriken are actual weapons used by samurais in ancient times. Izuku was examining the building for any entrance and checked its windows for any guards. I wish I had a small sword too, but this was all the weapons I could get my hands on, he thought. Earlier, after helping the Kazami family, Izuku went to buy the weapons and other equipment in the western part of Mustafa, where he got them without having to leave any kind of receipt or proof, while the outfit was bought very easily when he bought clothes for himself before the sports festival. Izuku looked around to see no guards outside, but with his quirk, he could sense 53 guards inside the building. Izuku jumped down the roof he was standing on and made his way to the building. He jumped over the fence and quickly walked to the building wall silently. He looked up to see a window open and used his quirk and jumped to its edge and grabbed it. He peeked in to see a small waiting area connected to an empty white hallway with 2 guards looking the other way. Both were wearing black suits with a white shirt and a black tie. Izuku looked to see a rotating camera, and when it looked the other way he jumped in and hid behind a wall. He peeked to see the guards again. He reached into his utility belt, pulled out a marble, and threw it to the other side of the wall in the other side of the small waiting area he was in. Hearing the marble hit the floor, the guards turned to see what it was. "I'll go and see what that was," one guard said, his voice was deep. The other nodded and looked the other way again. The first guard walked into the dark room Izuku was in. Izuku took a step back and hid behind a vending machine as the first guard walked into the dark waiting area and walked to the corner where Izuku had thrown the marble. As the man walked to the corner, Izuku carefully snuck up behind him and pulled out a melee weapon, a 10-pound metal ball connected to a black small elastic rope. As the man kneeled down to see what caused the noise, Izuku spun the weapon from one end and smashed the metal ball in the man's head, knocking him out quietly. He checked the man's clothes and found a taser and took it for himself. Izuku quickly dragged the unconscious man to a corner which was a blink spot for someone in the hall and again went back to where he was peeking in the hall from. The second guard was walking down the hall, most likely taking rounds. As he walked away, Izuku saw the camera moving the other way again and saw the guard was about to approach a door that had the tag for cleaning equipment. Seeing the opportunity, Izuku quickly but quietly snuck up on the guard. "I have to do this quickly before the camera looks my way again," Izuku thought as he matched his timing so he would reach the man right when he was in front of the door, and used the newly acquired taser on the man's neck, numbing him completely, and quickly opened the door to the room and dragged him inside, closing the door just in time for the camera to rotate back. Inside the room, Izuku was waiting for the camera to look away again. Having counted the seconds, it stopped as one side. 2 down, 51 to go. There must be at least one guard looking at that live camera footage. I have to be careful. If I leave anything suspicious, they will notice. He thought and looked up. Knowing about 5 seconds were left before the camera looked away again. I should first take out the guards in the camera room. They will notice the number of guards decrease if I save them for the last. He thought and peeked from the door gaps to see the camera move and rushed out. He ran right under the camera, stopped there, and waited for it to move again, so he could go further down the hall. His eyes narrowed. Each floor seems to have about, he counted all the people he sensed on each floor, about 10 guards on each floor, and the building has 5 floors, so 10 on each, and I took out 2 already. There seem to be 3 guards who aren't moving at all. One is alone on the 5th floor while the other 2 are together on the 4th floor. He looked to see the camera move again and rushed down the hall again. Judging by the structure of the building, the 2 who are together could be in the camera room while the one alone is in some kind of main office. I can take out the 2 first alongside the rest of the 48 guards. He thought as he cleared the hall just in time and hid from the camera's view in the other hall. He peeked to see a guard make a right turn at the other end of the hall while another one was standing at the halfway mark on the right, looking into another hall. Izuku with his sensing abilities could tell that the guard who turned right at the end of the hall was still going away, and this one guard at the halfway mark didn't have anyone in front of him. In this case, taking him out would be easy. but the camera at the end of the hall was moving and looking at the hall at the end and the hall Izuku is in. If I move now, the camera will see, and if I move later and attack, the camera will move back while I am hiding the unconscious body. He sighed a little. This leaves me only one option. He reached into his pouch and brought out a shuriken and threw it at the camera's base, where the rotation's mechanism was, blocking the camera from moving altogether. He rushed in, getting the guard's attention. He turned to see what the sound was but widened his eyes at seeing Izuku rush at him. He was about to scream but Izuku used his melee weapon and again smashed the metal ball in the guy's face, knocking him out. He quickly dragged the body out of the way of the hall the guard was watching over. Izuku sensed the first guard walking back and quickly used his full speed without using his quirk while maintaining his stealth and rushed to get there just in time for the guard to see the unconscious body in the hall. Izuku quickly pushed and smashed the guard back into the wall right under the CCTV camera, and suffocated the guard by pressing his left forearm on the guard's throat and kneed him between the legs, making his body lose strength. In a few seconds, the guard dropped unconscious and Izuku dragged him out of view as well. Izuku looked up to see the empty hall, sensing all the other guards, and sighed. This might take a while. After about 20 minutes, Izuku was on the 4th floor with all the people on it unconscious. He was surprised that the people in the monitor room didn't suspect anything but realized that they most likely didn't take notice of the disappearing guards. They must have been doing this job for a long time and didn't expect a sudden stealth attack. Their laziness cost them a lot tonight. Now he was standing in front of the security room, with 2 people inside, like he had predicted where the monitor room would be. Izuku narrowed his eyes and thought about how to approach the situation. Then he used the best option possible. He knocked on the door. In this case, this was the best option because 2 guards would never expect an ambush after hearing a knock on the 4th floor of the building with all the guards in the building. Izuku heard some footsteps as a man opened the door, and as soon as it did, Izuku did not wait and punched the man in his solar plexus and then uppercut him in the door. Hearing this, the other guard spun in his chair as he aimed a gun at whatever had knocked his partner out, but Izuku threw a kunai at the guy's hand, making him bleed, and dropped the gun as he held his hand in pain for a second, in which Izuku rushed in and kicked him in the face, knocking him out. When that happened, Izuku looked around to see that the room lights were off and there were some beer bottles around the room. Seeing this, he took a sniff and realized that these 2 had been drinking. That explains the lack of problems, Izuku thought, and dragged the guard close to the door inside the room and closed the door. Let's see what I can get here, he thought as he went to the wall with about 15 monitors for the CCTV cameras. Not a single one of them showed the unconscious people he had knocked out. Well, I hid them well, he thought, and pulled out a pen drive. Let's see what I can get, he thought, and started transferring all the footage of this month and the last month to see if he could find anyone important to enter the building. This process will take about 10 to 15 minutes. I can go and finish up the 5th floor, he thought, and left the room while the video transfer was happening. It took another 10 minutes to knock out everyone on the 5th floor. Now he stood before the door to what he assumed was the main office. He could sense one person inside. Izuku made the same approach as before and knocked on the door. Then he heard quiet footsteps approaching the door and stopping in front of it. Who's there? A male voice asked calmly. Izuku didn't respond. Who's there? The voice asked again, this time with a little edge to it. Izuku narrowed his eyes as he realized he would have to be a little more drastic. He looked at the double door entrance, took a step back, and used his right leg and kicked it, breaking its lock and making it fly open as the man behind the door jumped back a little and then dived in with a punch. Izuku raised his hand in the basic martial arts stance with his palm open and grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it, causing him pain as he winced a little. Izuku then threw a right uppercut to his chin, but the man leaned his head to the right and dodged. Before the man could do anything else, Izuku used his right leg and kneed him in the face and then delivered a jab and then a punch, knocking him out successfully. Since this was the last guard, Izuku didn't care about hiding him and walking into the room. The room looked like a main office with a huge desk at the end of the room and basic furniture you could see in an office. Izuku walked to the desk and went to the computer. When he opened it, the system asked for a password which he obviously didn't have. Izuku reached out into his small backpack and pulled out a laptop and some wires. He bought this just yesterday along with the other things for the base since he knew he would need them. He used the wire to connect the laptop to the computer and started using some advanced program systems and coding. After about 5 minutes the computer unlocked itself. Good thing I know hacking, he thought, and began typing using the laptop. After some looking around, he found some hidden files with some valuable intel and started reading them. On March 15th, today Jiren came to me and asked if I had some villains interested in an attack. I don't know what that guy is up to, but he seemed too excited about whatever the attack was on. Anyway, I sent some of the goons I know to him for a decent price. I don't know how many of them will join his plan, but that broker is no good news. If I could I would stay away from him, but he gets good money. Izuku read that and thought, some Jiren person was looking for some villains around the 15th of March. That's about enough time to prepare for the attack on the USJ, which happened on April 5th. He read through some more information that wasn't connected to the USJ attack but gave him insight on the man whose base he was in and many proofs of his involvement in illegal works and businesses. This person's name is Sakuma Roshi. Izuku then found the most recent file which mentioned the USJ attack. I can't believe this psycho. The thugs I sent his way were involved in an attack on the UA high school. If I knew that I wouldn't have gotten myself involved. It's a good thing that I leave no tracks of my involvement, but I do have another meeting with Jiren on May 15th. Izuku read further, as he found some more words of displeasure directed towards Jiren for getting Sakuma involved in the attack on USJ. There were also details about their meeting on May 17th, which was at a 5-star restaurant called the Gold Petals at 10 p.m. Izuku narrowed his eyes. So this Jiren is the person I was looking for. He sounds like a broker, just as I thought before. Looks like I'll have to add myself to this meeting as well, he thought, and spent the next 20 minutes copying any important files and information on his laptop to do more detailed research later. He then changed everything back to normal and removed anything on the computer that could suggest that the data was copied. He then made his way back to the CCTV room and did the same with the pen drive that now had the footage of the past 2 months. He then proceeded to delete the footage of tonight and the backup footage as well, and made sure he removed any digital footprints or traces, and then he left the building. 30 minutes later, after changing his clothes in a dark alley, Izuku took a 3-hour train ride back to Mustafa and went to the hotel he was staying at in the central area. Around 3 a.m. he arrived back at the capsule hotel he was staying at. A capsule hotel, also known in the Western world as a pod hotel, is a type of hotel developed in Japan that features many small, bed-sized rooms known as capsules. Capsule hotels provide cheap, basic overnight accommodation for guests who do not require it or who cannot afford larger, more expensive rooms offered by more conventional hotels. The hotel provides a public bath and decent-sized lockers to work with, and they cost only about 2,000–4,000 yen a night. As Izuku walked to his locker, he put his things inside, took a towel with his night clothes, and went for a bath to clean himself of all the sweat he had collected. As he prepared for the bath, stood under the shower and let the cold water pour on him, he thought, the thing I did today should not affect me. I only stole information and left no clues. This Sakuma probably won't contact the police. Though he will be worried about what had happened on his base and what was the objective of the attack, he won't be able to find anything. Since his work is illegal, he won't risk getting the police involved. At most he can ask around the place if people have seen someone suspicious around, but I made sure to not be seen by anyone, so I should be safe. Izuku thought. After he finished his bath, he went to his capsule room and laid on his bed. Let's see, I spent 100,000 yen rent on the base, 50,000 yen on the suit and equipment, 100,000 yen on the computer and other electronics, 20,000 for the Kazumi family, 30,000 yen on all my clothes, and about 100,000 on the small stuff I bought for the base. All of that adds up to 400,000 yen, he thought and sighed. I started with 840,000 yen and now I have 440,000, he thought, and pulled out his phone. He looked through some properties listed, this time in the northern area, closer to his school. They were much better and cozy. Normal would be the right word. The apartment door opens to a living room attached to a kitchen to the left with a width of 10 feet and a length of 14 feet. On the right of the main door there are 3 doors. On the right is the laundry closet, left is the door to the 10-foot by 11-foot bedroom, and front is the bathroom. The apartment is on the 16th floor and the rent is 150,000 yen a month. Izuku closed his phone. If I count the rent for this apartment and the grocery and other bills, it shouldn't be more than 200,000 yen at maximum. I can pay for a month and I will start earning from my model career from May 1st. I shouldn't have any problem if I move now, he thought, and booked an appointment online for an in-person viewing of the place for Friday. Izuku rested his head on the pillow. The first week of May is booked with photo shoots after school. Subtracting the agency fee, each day will pay me a little over 300,000 yen. And with a 5-day work week I will make about 1.5 million yen in a week if I make myself available for more days after that. I can make more just from photo shoots, and if I can get a commercial in the future then I will be paid more. That will surely help me get the resources for my future projects. He thought and closed his eyes and rested his forearm on his forehead. The school website mentioned that the Hero course will have a 1-week internship program in the second month of May. Maybe I can sign up for more workdays after that. Either way, living expenses are handled now. He rolled to his side and sighed. I should focus on what I have to do tomorrow. I'll probably look through all the files and CCTV footage I got till Friday, then go to rent the apartment, and then I have school on Monday. He sighed again. For a high schooler he had quite a lot to think and do as well as sigh about. Chapter 5.4 Thursday, April 25th. Around 9 a.m. Izuku was inside his base with all the things he had collected yesterday. He walked in and closed the door, walked to the computer desk which had 2 monitors, turned the computer on, and sat on his computer chair. The room was dark and only the light from the computer screen made things visible. The room only has a white folding table, a desk with a computer on it, and his computer chair, which makes sense since he only comes here to work. There are some more things in the secret basement. Izuku plugged in the pen drive, connected his laptop to the computer and started transferring the data to it. When the process began, he got up and grabbed the bag with his suit and equipment, walked to the bathroom, and went into the secret basement. When he stepped down the last stair, he saw his setup in there. On the front wall, there is a perforated rack panel, metal wall panels with holes in them. On the panel, there are some small rods to put his equipment on. Izuku walked forward, pulled out his baton, the stun gun, his kunai and shuriken pouch, and a small pack of about 10 marbles, which he uses to make sound distractions, and some metal wires from his bag, and placed them on the rack. Then he hung the small bag on the rack after talking out his clothes. Turning to his right, he approached a small closet and opened it. There were more sets of the same clothes in forest green and dark blue color with boots. He had bought them for camouflage in different areas, since having a variety of color options would be useful and practical. After putting his things in, he turned to see the opposite side of the room and looked at the second computer he had bought. This one was to access the illegal side of the internet, since that's where he could buy or access information from criminals themselves, an approach Hero doesn't take for some reasons. Izuku had decided to use 2 different computers because he didn't want to have his stolen information on the same computer as the one he would use to connect to the illegal online world. So, he decided to use 2 computers, one for information he gathers through practical work like he did yesterday, and the other to connect to the online world to not have a risk of someone hacking in and learning that he has such information. Izuku sighed yet again and decided to finish up the access process to the dark net, since the data transfer on the upper floor would take time. He had finished most of the process yesterday, so about 2 hours later Izuku was in the system and started looking for anything useful. Another hour later he sighed, since he had not found anything useful, just some people posting bloody things and looking for any small gigs. He was about to get off since the data was most likely transferred upstairs. He was about to turn off the system when his eyes landed on something important. As Izuku looked at the information, his eyes narrowed in interest as he leaned forward and read the information carefully, taking in all the details. After he finished reading, he quietly turned the system off and got up from his seat. Izuku quietly stepped back and went upstairs, thinking, I knew this would happen after the stunt I pulled at the festival, but even I didn't think it would be this quick, he thought and sighed. Well, this just means I will have more fights soon. He thought and reached the computer upstairs and saw that the data transfer was finished. He sat down and went through the files and CCTV footage to find clues. This process would go on for the rest of the day, but unfortunately, he would find nothing of importance. Izuku sighed. He had only slept for 3 hours last night and came here at 9 a.m., now it was 11:40 p.m. The sleep was really no problem for him. He could go 2 to 3 days without sleep and still operate at full capacity since his breathing technique supplied his brain with extra oxygen and blood flow. But tomorrow he had an appointment for the apartment viewing, so he decided to call it a day and be mentally fresh for the appointment and later give his full focus on the information gathering. The next day, on Friday, April 26th, Izuku reached the apartment building he was supposed to be at and found the real estate agent. A woman who looked like she was in her mid-20s with long brown hair and brown eyes. She was wearing a white shirt with a black blazer, a black skirt with black stockings, and black high heels. She had a clipboard in hand and she was reading something on it. Izuku approached her and called, "Mrs. Urami." He said the name he had read on her profile. The woman looked up at Izuku. "Are you Mr. Midoriya?" she asked, and Izuku replied with a, "Yes." She blinked and then smiled. "I must say I wasn't expecting you to be so young," she said. "As you know, my name is Urami. I will be your guide for today's viewing, please follow me." She started walking. Izuku followed her. "I guess she doesn't know about the sports festival. Well, it's only been 3 days, many people must have been too busy to watch it on Monday. Either she hasn't recognized me or plans on watching the festival on the weekend," Izuku thought as they reached the elevator. "Well, it's not my business thinking about her plans," he thought. The rest of the viewing went smoothly. He liked the house, it was clean and well maintained. After the viewing he signed the documents needed, paid the appropriate amount of 150,000 yen, and rented the apartment, and he would be able to access it from May 1st. After that, Izuku decided to go back to his base and spent the next 2 days, April 27th and 28th, watching the CCTV footage at 5 times the speed and reading all the documents and journals Sakuma had made. The documents mentioned many details of his crimes. While in public appearance, he ran non-profit organizations, orphanages, and old age homes, donated to religious organizations, and supported awareness against quirk discrimination. He himself is a politician who inherited his family's wealth. But behind the scenes, this man is involved in crimes like human trafficking, drug trafficking, illegal weapons export, robbery, murder, and more. He is involved in anything that can make money, no matter how many people are hurt or killed in the process. But the records he had kept for his crimes are now in Izuku's hands. All Izuku has to do is release these files to the public and it's game over for Sakuma. Izuku turned his head to look at the second monitor, which was playing the CCTV footage, and paused it, reversed it, and stopped to zoom in on a specific individual. A man, short man, around 5 feet 5 inches, in a brown 2-piece suit, black shoes, sunglasses, many gold rings on his fingers, and a cigar in his chubby mouth. He looks weak and ugly, which is true. This is Sakuma Roshi. Izuku looked at his picture and thought, I need him to guide me to this Jiren he mentioned, and I can get more information out of him later. Izuku paused for a bit and closed his eyes a little as he leaned back on his chair staring at the monitor. Looks like I'll play for a bit before I deal the final blow, Izuku thought, a little amused. Chapter 5.6 April 29th, Monday. This day was going to be exciting, because many lives will take a new turn, for better or for worse can only be discovered in the future. UA High school is going to begin a new day in school after the sports festival, and finally, students will focus on their academics for a week. Inside the classroom on 1A, Aizawa is explaining to the class about what will happen soon. Alright, you all did great in the sports festival, Aizawa said as he looked around the room, and then his eyes landed on 3 specific students one by one: Tokiyami, Bakugo, and Midoriya. Good job on winning the sports festival. He congratulated them with no enthusiasm or emotion. He continued, but you all need to prepare for what comes next. He said to the whole class, getting confused looks from everyone but Izuku. Aizawa quirked an eyebrow. Does he know? He thought. So, no one else read the school website in detail after admission. Izuku thought. The information on student programs were only available to students who were accepted and given student IDs and student emails. It appears no one really looked into the website in depth after getting the admission. Aizawa ignored his questions regarding Izuku and continued, "Next Monday you all will be going on 1-week-long internships with pro heroes," Aizawa said. Momo raised her hand with a question and Aizawa accepted it. Momo began, "Sensei, what do you mean by internships? Can you elaborate?" she asked. Aizawa nodded and started. Pro heroes who take an interest in certain UA students who performed well in the UA Sports Festival can offer them a chance to intern with them through a draft. Pros normally draft second or third year students, but this time all the first years put out some exceptional performances according to them, and that made heroes take an interest in your potential, and here you are," Aizawa said as everyone blinked in understanding. "Then Sensei, how will be decided which hero to go to?" Jiro asked. Aizawa looked at her. "Some students got an internship offer, the ones who didn't can pick from some hero agencies connected to UA High," he said, and Jiro nodded as her question was answered. "So, which students got the offers, Sensei?" Mina asked excitedly. "Most students who made it to the final round, but like I said, everyone will get options to pick from. Right now we are still processing the number of heroes who offered the internships, but it will be finished by the time you all pick your hero names," he said, confusing them with the last part. Hero names. They all thought together. Just then the room's door burst open and entered Midnight with a catwalk and a whip. "Yes, today we will decide your hero's name," she said as she reached the podium and pushed Aizawa away, taking his place. "Hero names are essential. They are your identity in the hero world. So today you all will decide your hero names and I will decide if they are appropriate enough for the field," she said, and almost everyone got excited at the end. Hero names, huh? Izuku thought as he heard some unimportant conversation between his classmates and Midnight, and then Midnight gave them 20 minutes to decide a name. Izuku placed his elbows on the table, rested his chin on the back of his intertwined hands, and closed his eyes. "A hero name, huh? What should it be?" he started thinking. After 5 minutes he opened his eyes, satisfied with his pick. "Yes, that would do just fine," he thought, and started to look around. "Looks like everyone is still thinking," he thought as he saw all his classmates. Todoroki-san's shoulders look more relaxed. "That's good," he thought, happy for the boy, and he turned to see Bakugo. "Bakugo-san looks mad as ever," he thought with a mental sweat drop. Then his eyes landed on Ida and his relaxed expression dropped. Ida looked tense, which was understandable since his brother had been fatally injured recently, but earlier when Izuku had made eye contact with him he could tell that the boy was not in the right mental space. "I might have to keep an eye on him," he thought, and turned his head away. Soon 20 minutes passed and Midnight spoke up. "Does anyone have a name they decided on?" she asked, and several students nodded excitedly. Midnight smiled. "Good, now who would like to show their name first?" she asked, and immediately all students looked hesitant, but soon Suyu walked forward and showed her hero name, Froppy, which Midnight liked and approved it. Soon the other students also showed their names as well, and Midnight approved them all, including Todoroki and Ida using their own names. The only one who wasn't approved was Bakugo, since his name was not friendly at all, which was true. If a hero named Lord Explosion Murder showed up, then most likely the victims would get more scared than the villains. "All right, Midoriya, do you have a name yet?" Midnight asked as Bakugo sat down on his seat, glaring at the name he wrote. Izuku nodded and walked to the front and wrote his name on the board. He turned to the class and said, "My hero name will be Yoichi," he said with confidence. Hearing them, some smiled at the cool name except Momo, who seemed to be thinking something after hearing the name. Midnight looked excited and pumped her fist. "That's a great name. Does it have a specific meaning?" she asked with a smile. Izuku looked at her and nodded. He was about to answer the question when the noise of a pencil hitting the floor rang out. Everyone looked to see it was Momo's pencil that hit the ground, which she accidentally dropped. Her eyes were a little wide. Seeing this, Izuku smiled internally. Looks like she figured it out, he thought, and spoke up. "How about you answer Midnight's question for me, Yaoyorozu-san?" he said as everyone looked at the girl. Momo didn't wait and with a nervous expression and voice asked, "Why your hero name is Yoichi? is it supposed to mean? The words she said next surprised everyone. The smart ones, including the teachers, started thinking and quickly realized that in classical Japanese the word, yoichi, translates to world's greatest. Izuku smiled and answered, yes it does, and that's why I chose the name Yoichi. Silence settled in for a few seconds. Looks like my name was too straightforward, I shouldn't have been so blunt, huh? Izuku thought with a mental sweat drop. After everything he did at the sports festival, no one expected him to be so bold so soon. The hell do you mean you'll be the best? Someone yelled. As expected, it was Bakugo. He continued, making some small explosions in his palm. Just because you beat me once doesn't mean you're better than me. Fight me no and I'll show you. His words were cut off when his quirk stopped as Aizawa glared at him with his quirk active still on the floor in his sleeping bag. Sit down. I don't want to deal with dry eyes right now, he said sharply, and Bakugo sat down with a scoff. After that happened, Midnight looked at Izuku. Yoichi, huh? That's a great name, she said. I see the resemblance with All Might's name. Both your and his name make it sound like you are calling yourself the best. Are you trying to be the next All Might? She asked teasingly at the end. Izuku smiled. No, I don't want to be the second All Might. I will be the first Yoichi, my own kind of hero, not someone's copy. He spoke, making everyone go quiet. Izuku's words weren't arrogant or shocking. They were quite refreshing and respectable for someone his age, since most heroes and kids want to be the next All Might. So, his idea of being his own kind of hero is respectable, and even his classmates understand that. Including Bakugo and Todoroki. Bakugo scoffed. Tisk, whatever. He thought. Todoroki smiled a little, almost unnoticeable, as expected of him. He thought. After all, Izuku had opened his eyes to his flaws and reached out to him, reminding him to focus on being the kind of hero he wants, like he promised his mother as a child, rather than being a hero who can oppose his father, Endeavor. He was much calmer and relaxed after meeting his mother last week, both mentally and emotionally. Midnight smiled. That's very nice. I approve of your name, she said, and Izuku nodded gratefully and went back to his seat. As Izuku sat down, he saw the time and mentally sighed. What will I do next? He thought. The time for lunch break was near, and he knew what was going to happen then. In the morning his classmates had crowed his desk asking about his performance, how he scared everyone in the second round, and how his physical performance was so high without his quirk, but Izuku had timed his entrance right and arrived exactly 2 minutes before the bell, and Aizawa had scared them away before Izuku had to answer them. Izuku looked at the time and sighed again. Only 1 more minute left, and this time no one would save him from the questions. Maybe I can jump out of the window. It's only the 12th floor. If I use my quirk, I should be fine, he thought, with his chin resting on his palm and elbow on the desk as he looked out the window. No, that might be too much, and they will ask more questions later anyway. He sighed again and waited. About 10 minutes later the bell went off, signaling the start of lunch break. As soon as that happened, most of Izuku's classmates approached him and started asking the same questions from the morning. Midoriya-san, how did you get so strong? Yeah, and what was that martial arts you were talking about? Scratch that, how were you so scary in the second round? I had trouble breathing when I got close to you. How many martial arts do you know? I thought you only learned swordsmanship, bro. You were so cool in the festival. How did you come up with your hero's name? Can you give me some tips? There were many more questions about different things. Izuku stood up abruptly, stopping their questions as they looked at him confused. Izuku looked at them. Guys, you are asking too many questions. But here are the answers. My martial arts is a secret and mostly forgotten one. In the whole world there are only a few who knows about it, and I am one of them. And no, I won't teach it to you guys. The discipline and hard work is something you can't keep up with. At that, some looked a little offended, but Izuku kept going. I know my words may seem rude, but that is the truth. It takes years to learn this art and you all simply won't have the time to do it. Izuku tried to avoid saying any more about the breathing techniques. After some more casual chit-chat, Izuku finally got a chance to leave and walked out of the classroom. As Izuku walked into the hallway full of other students going about their business, he heard a voice. Midoriya-san, wait a second. Izuku turned to see it was Kaminari who called. Izuku had nothing. The boy wanted to talk to him inside the classroom too but was hesitant to call. Yes, Kaminari-san. Izuku said calmly with a neutral expression. Kaminari looked at him a little nervously. Hey, I was wondering if you could maybe help me train a little, he said. Izuku raised his eyebrows in question, but inside he already knew what this conversation was about. He just wanted Kaminari to say it himself. What do you mean, Kaminari-san? Please be specific, Izuku said. Kaminari looked around a little nervously. Well, Iaga, can you please teach me that martial arts you were talking about? He asked desperately. Izuku didn't give an outward reaction. I believe I made myself clear when I said I wouldn't teach anyone my techniques, he said calmly. Kaminari squinched his right eye a little in guilt, knowing he was going against Izuku's request. He adopted a guilty look but didn't back down. His head turned downwards and shoulders slumped as he said, I remember what you said, and I understand and respect your wishes, but, he clenched his fists and looked up with a strong resolve and continued, but I really need your help. I need to get stronger. Please, even if you don't want to teach me your special technique, at least help me improve on the basics. You're really good in hand-to-hand combat and have some other cool tricks. Please just teach me anything, he said a little loud as he got closer to finishing. Desperation was easily detectable in both his voice and body language. Anyone could tell he really wanted Izuku to teach him. Izuku, however, didn't change his expression and faked a thinking expression. After a few seconds he faked a sigh and looked at Kaminari. I'm quite busy this week. Wait for me after school in the locker room till closing time, which I believe is 8 p.m. If I don't show up till then means I was too busy. If I get time I'll show up there. If not in this week then I'll show up on Friday at least, he said as Kaminari smiled happily, but before he could say anything Izuku continued, but if I show up on any of the days before Friday and you're not there then forget the idea of me teaching you. Izuku said firmly and walked away without waiting to hear anything from Kaminari, who had a look of utter confusion. Kaminari-san was probably thinking he could just wait for me on Friday, but I'm gonna make sure he has to wait for me the entire week. Izuku thought calmly as he walked to an isolated area of the school, thinking about the situation he put Kaminari in, and how he will do the same to the boy approaching him from behind. Izuku turned around and came face to face with Hitoshi Shinso. There was no one around them in the hallway right now. Most likely everyone was in the cafeteria, and this area usually laced any other students since it's the way to the workshops for the first-year support students. Can I help you somehow? Izuku asked calmly. Shinso looked at him with his usual dull and tired look. What makes you think I'm here to ask you for help? He asked. You followed me here, and someone from General Studies won't have anything to do in the support course area. Now stop the quiz and tell me what you want. I came here special so we can have a little privacy, Izuku answered and turned to him fully. Shinso looked at him quietly as some hesitance became visible in his eyes, enough for Izuku to notice. Speak your mind. Izuku encouraged him. Shinso waited for a second and sighed. This is more nerve-wracking than I imagined, he thought, and beeped in a deep breath and looked at Izuku and suddenly bowed to a 45-degree angle. Midoriya-san, please become my teacher. Please teach me how to fight without my quirk, like how you fought Todoroki-san during the sports festival. I beg of you please, he asked calmly, but desperation was detectable in his voice. His head was down so Izuku couldn't see his face, but he could imagine the nervousness on Shinso's face right now. Regardless, Izuku maintained a calm expression, not letting any of his thoughts or emotions be detectable, and gave an unexpected answer in a cold tone. Why should I? Hearing that, Shinso's eyes widened, not in shock since he knew Izuku had no reason to teach him, but because he wasn't sure if he could convince Izuku to teach him. Regardless, he tried. Shinso clenched his fist and adopted a more serious look. One with resolve. Truth be told, there is no benefit in it for you. I want to become a hero, and I want to stop crying about not being able to do it because my quirk isn't good enough, he said, and Izuku internally took interest. Shinso continued. All I can do is request, but if you don't want to train me then that's fine. You're still the person who opened my eyes to my foolishness. I will become a hero even if I have to find someone else to train me. Shinso bowed and turned to leave. Izuku saw this and blinked a little. Well, I was expecting him to convince me at least a little, he thought, amused, and called out calmly. Wait, he said, and Shinso turned to look at him confused. Izuku continued, I don't mind training you, he said, and Shinso blinked and then his eyes widened and an excited smile came to his face. But before he said anything Izuku spoke again. I don't mind as long as you can prove it'll be worth my time, he said, confusing Shinso. What do you mean? He asked. Izuku started, not with a serious expression, my training will be hard, and when I say that I mean you'll see your life flash before your eyes. So, prove to me that you have the resolve to go through with it, prove to me that you won't give up. Hearing the intensity of the training, Shinso's eyes widened. He wanted to think that Izuku was exaggerating at least a little, but the serious expression on his face told Shinso that Izuku meant every word he said. Shinso gulped a little as some sweat collected in his clenched fists and on his forehead, but the resolve on his face didn't waver. I understand. He said in all seriousness, how can I prove myself to you? He asked. Hearing this, Izuku's serious expression loosened and he closed his eyes momentarily and opened them with the usual calmness. He started walking towards Shinso. Meet me in my classroom after school, but I will warn you that I am busy this week so I might not be there. However, I want you to stay there till the school's closing time. If I don't show up, then wait for me the next day. If I show up on any of the days and I don't see you there, then you can forget about me teaching you anything. If I do see you there, I will administer a test, and if you pass, I will take you on as my student. Izuku said as he walked past Shinso. Hearing the part that suggested that Shinso has to stay in school the whole week confused him, as it suggested that Shinso has to stay in school every day even though Izuku can easily call him on Friday when he is guaranteed to have time. Shinso was caught up in his thoughts, so when he turned to confront Izuku, who had walked past him, he found no one. Blinking in confusion, what was that about, he thought, but frowned a little and a sigh escaped his lips as he resigned himself to the conditions Izuku put on the deal. Knowing that bugging Izuku about things would be rude since Shinso was already asking him for training while giving nothing in return. The boy grumbled and left to have his lunch, not knowing that both his and Kaminari's test had begun. Izuku, who had reached his classroom, good, he thought as he walked in, as I predicted, both Kaminari-san and Shinso-san approached me today, he thought as he walked to his seat and looked around the empty classroom, more specifically, the seats of Fumikage Tokiyami, Shoto Todoroki, Tenya Ida, Momo Yaoyorozu, and Tsuyu Asui. While he had already seen potential in Tokiyami, Todoroki, and Ida, after the sports festival, Yaoyorozu and Asui had also shown great potential for growth. Well, everyone in the class had shown that potential, but the Yaoyorozu and Asui had theirs is on brink of being unlocked. They just need to walk in the right direction, and Izuku had decided to help them out. However, unlike how he wants to teach Tokiyami, Todoroki, Kaminari, Ida, and Shinso like a teacher, Yaoyorozu and Asui and some others will only receive words of encouragement and guidance from him. He had deduced that people like Yaoyorozu and Asui only need a mental or emotional push, unlike people like Kaminari and Shinso who literally need to learn physical material. Izuku walked to his seat and sat down as he thought, well, I'll let others play around for a little longer. This week I want to focus on Kaminari-san and Shinso-san. After all, his gaze became more serious as he looked at one seat in particular. After all, the next week might be more time-consuming, he thought as he looked at the seat of Tenya Ida. Throughout the whole day till now, Izuku and almost everyone else had noticed how Tenya wasn't talking to anyone or asking any questions. He only spoke the bare minimum. More than that, there was a certain air about him that kept everyone from approaching him. Izuku suspected that Tenya was going to do something stupid soon, to be more specific next week, during the one-week internship program. Izuku turned his head. The one-week internships, I was expecting someone to talk about it, but it looks like no one read the student school website. It updates frequently, letting students and parents know what special or important events their specific courses will have in the near future. According to the website, after the festival, there's the one-week internship, then the unit final exams, then a training camp at the end of the summer break. Beyond that, nothing have been mentioned. He thought to himself and continued, now the question, will my classmates have the insight to pick a hero who will actually pick out their best, or just pick the one with the highest ranking? Their choices will tell a lot about their maturity and intelligence, but most of all, he thought and took a brief glance at Tenya's seat again, I wonder what you will do now, Tenya Ida. He thought. After organizing some thoughts, he waited for the lunch break to end. He was particularly looking forward to the next period since it was the heroic class and Aizawa was the one taking it instead of All Might today. The reason he was looking forward to this one is because according to the school website they are supposed to pick their hero names today, which already happened, and get the list of the heroes who invited them for the internship. The side note also mentioned that while those who make it to the final round of the festival usually get many invites, the students who don't get any invitations will have 40 options to pick from, by the heroes who are willing to take anyone as an intern for the week. Izuku had predicted that today's heroics class would focus on selecting or at least getting the list of heroes. When the bell rang indicating the end of lunch break, some of Izuku's classmates made their way into the class and waved some highs and normal greetings. Eventually Aizawa also entered the class with a huge bundle of papers, which was enough for Izuku to realize that they would most likely get the hero list, but he was not excited at all. Why? Because he already predicted the exact number of invites he received and also the one he would pick for his internship. As he waited for the last of his classmates to enter the room and Aizawa to get ready to teach, he closed his eyes for a second and thought, well, if I'm right, UA High will see another abnormality today. After all, no one in UA High's history who got the first place in the sports festival ever received 0 invites. Chapter 5.8 At the end of the day, Izuku was walking out of the school building towards the main door like many other students. However, unlike others who were walking in pairs or groups, Izuku was walking alone. While he had the option to walk with others, he had to get to his photo shoot quickly even though he had an hour left since he would prefer to be early than be late. While walking he was thinking about the heroic period and the shocked reaction of everyone when Aizawa showed them that Izuku received 0 invites, just like the boy had predicted to himself. He remembered all the questions and concerns other students showed and asked the typical questions. Why did no one invite him? I thought Midoriya-san would get the most invites. This is not normal, is it? These were just a few of the questions. Aizawa had told them that heroes didn't invite Izuku because he didn't use his quirk and they didn't know what to expect from him. However, both Izuku and Aizawa knew the real reason why this happened. While not using his quirk could have caused some to back away from inviting him, the same can't be applied to the top 100 heroes since they had seen that Izuku can fight at a decently high-level battle without his quirk using his mysterious martial art. Some could have called him to help him train while some would have wanted to learn more about the martial art but no one did. The reason is that Izuku Midoriya's background is empty. According to the official files, Izuku Midoriya didn't exist till 3 months ago. No middle school records, no home records, no birth records, no parents or guardians, or anyone who ever existed with the Midoriya name. A boy who suddenly came out of thin air, and to top it off the fact that he was found unconscious on a beach and that he knocked out several low-ranking pro heroes right after waking up with several injuries was obviously not put on his record, so when the heroes who wanted to invite him checked his records provided by the school, they only got his name, class, and that his first record with the government was from 3 months ago, who came out of nowhere, not even his age was mentioned. A boy with unknown skills and high potential, who was extremely strong without his quirk, knows an unknown and ancient martial art with a mysterious quirk. No hero, no matter how strong or high-ranking they are, wanted to be involved with someone so mysterious. For all they knew, he was the child of a crazy villain or a spy in UA sent by the Hero Commission to find something on Nezu. After all, it was known why most heroes that Nezu and the Commission weren't on the friendliest terms. The point is, that Izuku Midoriya is a true enigma who no hero wants to involve themselves with, which was the reason he had 0 invites. However, having already predicted the unexpected as he has been doing till now, had already pulled an unexpected counter to his new problem and had asked a pro hero to intern him, a hero no one would expect. In the office of Principal Nezu, chuckles were being let out by the one and only Principal Nezu, chuckles that would send chills down some of the strongest and most influential people in the country. Principal Nezu, who rarely interacted with his students, much less just one at a time, was laughing to himself after reading the email. His most entertaining student and his unpredictable request, Izuku Midoriya, had surprised him again. After he stopped his chuckling and looked at the email again, "To think you would choose this course of action, my student," he said to himself in amusement yet again as he read the name of the hero Izuku had requested to intern with and smiled. Well, this is most certainly doable, but I wonder what you're trying to achieve knowing your chose might try to know more about you, he said, but slowly his smile faded as he opened another email he received over the weekend by contact of his. As he read its context again and opened a file that was sent with it, he frowned knowing this was a problem. Nezu sighed. Oh well, at least I can protect you now, but I will have to do something about this, he thought, as he looked at the picture document, a profile. A bounty profile on the dark net with a reward of $1 million, 147,399,091 sen, on Izuku Midoriya. As Nezu looked at him he sighed again. I just hope no high-ranking villain is coming after him already, he thought, but then smiled. Well, even if they do, I won't let anything happen to him, he thought as he opened Izuku's email again as let his eyes trace one particular line. Izuku Midoriya request to be interned by the pro hero, Nezu. Nezu reading this again smiled, almost smirked a little. Well, I'm not one to walk away from a request that helps me as well. Thank you for making the task of protecting you easier. Well, intern or not, I'll make sure to protect you under my care, he said to himself as he typed an email accepting his request. Somewhere in Europe, a dark figure was standing in a room that appeared to be something like the kitchen of a restaurant. The lights were out except for the two on the stoves, which made the man's silhouette be clearer. The man is very muscular, standing at around 6 feet 2 inches. He has mid-length straight black hair that reaches to his ears. His eyes are charcoal black, and he has thin black eyebrows and a scar on the corner of his right eye. He seems to be Italian, in his mid-30s. Currently, his posture is tense and he is standing straight, wearing a compressed black shirt and baggy black pants with black boots. Beep beep. The silence in the room is broken by the sound of a ringtone. The man silently looks at his pocket for a second and takes out the phone, wondering who called him. He checks to see the name of someone he considers annoying yet useful. He grunts and picks up the call. What do you want? He said in French, his deep voice filled with power. Is that how you talk to your longtime best friend? A cheerful male voice replied back, seemingly used to this behavior. Just cut to the chase, Antonio. I don't have the patience for this right now. He said, annoyed. Someone's in a foul mood today. Let me guess you just finished a job. Antonio asked but didn't get an answer in return and sighed. Fine, I'll get to the point. I have a job for you, but it might be tough. For how much? He cut off Antonio and asked. $1 million, Antonio answered. Not big enough. I don't want it. The still unnamed man was about to cut off the call when Antonio said something that made him reconsider his choice. The contract came from them, Antonio said, putting stress on the word them, making the other man widen his eyes slightly. There was only one organization to which they referred as them. They are on the move again. And they want someone dead. Their targets don't usually have such low rewards, he asked. Yeah, but that's because most people even in the underworld don't how dangerous the target is, Antonio answered. Who is this target? The mystery man asked. Antonio chuckled a little. Oh, this is the neat part. We know him. Well, about him. It's someone you wanted to kill already. I'll send you the details now, Robert, Antonio said and cut the call. The now named Robert pulled the phone away from his ear and looked at the file Antonio just sent him. As soon as he opened the file, his eyes widened when he saw the target's photo, and then a sinister grin appeared on his face. When he scrolled to look at the name, he raised an eyebrow and said to himself, Izuku Midoriya. Not the name I remember, but okay, what he was called before wasn't exactly a name, he said to himself. Then another text from Antonio came saying, get on the move, we aren't the only ones on the job. That Russian sisters duo is on the job too. The opportunity to strike will be next week in Japan when the target will be playing hero. Reading this, Robert raised both his eyebrows in surprise. This brat is playing the hero. Who would have guessed that thing would be this shameless, he thought, and then frowned a little. Hope you didn't get weak playing your little game, 'cause I wanna kill you at your best. Either way, I'll finally get to meet you and kill you, he thought with a grin, completely dismissing the part of about the Russian sisters duo. Bobbert Wen put his phone in his pocket and finally moved, stepping over some of the dead people he killed a few minutes ago. Somewhere in Russia, on a balcony of a penthouse on the top floor of a huge about 30-story building, two blonde women with blue eyes, both looked to be in their mid-20s, they were wearing matching tight black pants and tight black shirts, and both had beautiful bodies with desirable curves. They have slightly tanned skin. One was standing on what looked like a surfboard while the other was sitting on a sofa with her board leaning on the sofa seat. Both were focused on their phones. "Hey Jess, the boys' school is hosting a school trip next week, we can attack him then," the one standing said to her sister in Russian, still not looking away from her phone. "First, what you call a trip is actually an internship. Second, yeah, we will have to attack him during that 1 week. Third, don't act like you found the information about his internship, the client provided us with the information. And lastly, we have to move fast. I was told that organization hired another assassin, the top one from Italy, and apparently he knows more about this kid we're targeting," Jess answered as she chewed on her bubble gum scrolling through her phone. "The top from Italy? Wait, do you mean that infamous Silent Reaper?" the first girl asked, surprised. Jess twirled her hair with her left hand's finger, still looking at her phone. "Yeah, him. He's been in the business way longer than us and apparently he knows something about the target's past. Seems like this kid isn't normal, though we don't know anything about his past, only that he's a high school freshman who has a lot of potentials. Obviously there is more to it, but our only job is to kill him," she said as she got up from her seat. "Let's go, Tess," he called to her sister as she threw her surfboard on the ground and stood on it. "Don't order me," Jess said, annoyed, but stood on her board. "I'm your older sister, I can order you," Tess replied. "Shut up, you're only older than me by 7 minutes, Jess said back, but Tess ignored her and used her quirk as her board started floating in the air with her standing on it. Jess joined her in the air. Tess spoke up, "We're strong but not at the same level as Silent Reaper, and the fact that the client hired him as well meant the target is stronger than what he showed on the TV. Either way, I don't think we will have a hard time against a kid, but if we want to get the credit, we have to get to him before Silent Reaper. If that guy gets his hand on the kid, then he'll kill him before we can do anything." Jess nodded, knowing that they were strong but not in the same league as the Silent Reaper. Thinking about brought a question to her mind. "Sis, why would the client hire that guy to kill a random kid? Are you sure we aren't underestimating the kid?" she asked. Tess, who had maintained an uninterested look on her face from the start, replied in the same way, "Does it matter? We have to kill a kid. How hard could it be? Or are you scared now?" Hearing that, Jess frowned. "Me? Scared of a kid? Looks like you finally lost your mind, hag," he said, and she folded her arms under her beep and looked away angrily. A tick mark appeared on Tess's forehead at being called a hag, but she brushed it off, and her beard started moving forward in mid again. "Either way, let's move. I want to get to that kid before our Italian friend," she said, and her board picked up speed. "Wait for me," Jess said as she followed her sister at the same speed. Both moved with only one objective in mind: to kill Izuku Midoriya. Outside the gates of UA High School, Izuku stopped for a bit to make some payments online after getting the notification that his money from his model agency had been transferred. Another reason he waited at the main gates was to see if Kaminari and Shinso went to the places they were told to wait at, and safe to say they were at the locations. After making the payments, like the one for his computer and other devices, he walked to the main gate and was about to leave. He felt his phone vibrate and took it out to see an email. He opened it to see it was from Nezu. When he opened the email, he saw that Nezu had accepted his offer and had decided to intern him for the week. Seeing this, Izuku felt pleased with his success. Throughout the history of UA High Academy, no student had ever tried to intern with Nezu, even though he was always a hero. Generally, it would make sense, why intern with a staff member when you already learn from them? But that can't be applied to Nezu. While no one thought about it, thinking from a different perspective and putting Nezu in line with other heroes is an option for intern, one can say he is the best option. Interacting with someone who has great intellect, knowledge, influence, and long teaching experience. Moreover, his interns might even be given access to different equipment or get to see more complex cases and understand the more complicated parts of being a hero and solving hero cases. Those are some benefits an intern can get from working with Nezu, but Izuku has different things in mind. Besides the fact that is probably the only hero he can intern with. Working with Nezu might give him a chance to keep an eye on Ida, and more importantly he might be able to convince Nezu to stop Ida in case he decides to go after Stain the hero killer. And even if he doesn't, Izuku himself will need to take care of things. After all, he read the details about him on the dark net. Izuku looked up in the sky and thought, 3 people should be on their way here by now. At least that's what the info said. 3 enemies are coming to claim my bounty. He closed his eyes as he started thinking again, but a small bounty of $1 million couldn't attract anyone from other continents. A small bounty was most likely to attract bounty hunters from Japan only, so why? Suddenly he narrowed his eyes in realization. I see, he muttered and continued in a low, dangerous voice, someone is targeting me. He closed his eyes to take a calming breath, opened them again, and thought, but who? Someone who knows about my past. No, shouldn't. No one in this world knows about my past other than the people who might have heard things about me, but no one is alive who would want to kill me for the secrets I know. I made sure no one like that is alive. He stopped that thought process and calmed himself again. No matter, I will just have to get that information when I host my guests next week. He thought and was about to leave when a loud voice rang out from behind him, which caused him to stop in his tracks and turn around to see what the commotion was about. Wait, the voice came again and Izuku saw a girl he had never met before coming towards him and he blinked. Is she calling me? He thought in wonder, but that went away when she stopped right in front of him and leaned a little, placing her hands on her knees and looking down. Izuku looked confused and was about to say something when the girl shot her head but with a bright smile, and started talking fast, very fast. Hey, what's your name? What is your quirk? What's the martial arts you were talking about? Why do you have green hair? Are they related to your quirk? How tall are you? I saw you in a magazine. Are you a model? I heard you got hurt during the USJ. How did that happen? Why was everyone afraid of you in the second round of the festival? How old are you? With each question, she was subconsciously taking a step closer, causing Izuku to take a few steps back himself. And after all that, she finally stopped to take a breath and then looked at Izuku and blinked when she saw a confused expression and lauded a little. Oh, sorry, you must have not been able to keep up with me. She was about to apologize when Izuku started speaking. My name is Izuku Midoriya. My quirk will take a long time to explain. My martial arts is an ancient secret style, and I have natural green hair. They are not related to my quirk. I'm 5 feet 11 inches. I am a startup model. I got hurt during USJ in a fight alongside my sensei. Everyone was afraid because of a trick I used. I'm 17 years old, he said. This time the girl blinked in surprise, and then suddenly her eyes sparkled and she smiled brightly. She got on her tiptoes and leaned forward in excitement, causing Izuku to lean backward. She didn't realize how close she was and spoke to you. You kept up with my questions. That's the first time someone answered all my questions. That's so cool, she said with childlike excitement. Izuku stepped back, making appropriate space between them, which made her realize how close she was before, and stepped back a little as well. While both were standing closely for a few seconds, they both seemed fine. The girl maintained she cute smile and Izuku maintained his soothing and calm expression. The girl spoke up again. Sorry about that. I usually don't get close to people, but I was extra curious and excited to meet you, and you seemed like a safe guy when I just saw you a moment ago. She said and finished by tilting her head cutely. Izuku looked at her and asked, looked like a safe guy? How can you tell that when you just met me now? He asked. The girl blinked and answered cheerfully, well, usually when I talk to boys they only look at my body, which is super creepy, so I don't talk to most boys, only girls. And I could tell you weren't also. I have my super cool women's intuition, she said cheerfully and continued. But don't try anything. I only slipped up for a second. Please don't get the wrong idea. If you try anything weird I'll have to teach you a lesson, hee, she said with a small chuckle at the end while pumping her fist in the air. Though Izuku could tell that she said that jokingly. After all, she didn't expect a UA student to pull such a thing, and Izuku gave exactly the opposite of creepy vibes, and more than any of that. Izuku narrowed his eyes a little as he used his quirk's sensory ability and focused on the girl before him, and sensed an overwhelming level of power compared to any other student in his class. This girl's energy was strong enough to overpower the likes of Todoroki, Tokiyami, Bakugo, and his other classmates. When she said she would teach him a lesson if he tried anything weird or creepy, if he was any other boy in his entire year, she could most likely beat them without much difficulty. She is most likely one of the stronger students even among the upper classes and is currently strong enough to beat anyone in the first year easily. Of course that excludes Izuku himself. He is not any other boy in his year. As strong as she is, Izuku can tell he has much more life force than her, many times in fact. Then again, he has more life force than most people, even counting the pro heroes he's met so far. She poses no threat, but again, he himself will never do anything creepy to a girl no matter what. But still, life force is the energy supply to any quirk. To increase it by training, one needs to exhaust the life force, and the only way is for one to use their quirk to the very limit. The problem in increasing it is that quirk factors get exhausted before reaching the point of exhaustion. The more complex the quirk, the harder it is to make it stronger by exhaustion, and the more straightforward the quirk, the easier it is to exhaust it. Like mine, my quirk factor literally lets me manipulate my life force instead of doing one particular task like other quirks, which makes it easier to exhaust my life force and increase it like stamina. Which begs the question, what is her quirk? He thought all this in less than 5 seconds and looked at her. I remember her name and quirk name from the list from the first day, but that doesn't tell me the details about her quirk. Is her quirk? He had to stop that thought process when she spoke up again. Hey, wait, did you say you're 17? How's that, you were in the first year, right? I saw you at the sports festival. She asked. Izuku replied, yes, I'm a first-year student and I'm 17, even though other first years should be 15 or 16 depending on which month their birthday is in. He added the extra detail so she knows they are on the same page. Yeah, that's weird, a 17-year-old should be a second year or third year, like me. She got chipper at the end. I'm 17 right now even though I'm a third-year student, but my birthday is in October so I'll be 18 till then, she informed and continued, like that. If you're 17 you should be a second or third year. She muttered the last part and then gasped after thinking something, leaned closer and asked in hushed whisper like a little child, were you held back in middle school? Is that why you're a year older? If you were bad at studies then don't worry, I won't tell anyone, she said like a little child with one hand at the side of her mouth. Hearing this, Izuku couldn't help but let out an amused breath from his nose and said, no, I wasn't held back, I was kind of homeschooled till now so I was learning at my pace. He said, and the girl blinked. She tilted her head and asked with genuine curiosity, so does that mean it took you an extra year to get to the high school level? Izuku again smiled a little in amusement at her assumption. Maybe, who knows, I could be ahead of my peers. The truth will come out after the exams, he said, keeping his academic standing a mystery, causing the girl to pout, but she dropped it instantly and smiled again. Do your classmates know your age? She asked. No, they don't, and I don't want to tell them yet. Can you please keep it a secret? Izuku asked politely. The girl nodded repeatedly. Sure, you got it. Believe it or not, I can keep secrets, she said cutely again, and Izuku nodded with a smile. Internally Izuku sighed. His age alone could give out a lot of information if they were smart enough. Izuku's report doesn't specify his age, but if it's figured out that he is a year older than the other students, the first assumption will be that he was held back. This could lead to someone demanding answers. After all, people from other courses are looking for a chance to enter the hero course, and someone might try to say that someone who was held back shouldn't be in the country's best school. Also, this could lead to someone asking about which missile school he was in when he was supposedly held here. It could force Nezu to reveal that he was found on a beach unconscious with no background whatsoever, just to keep fairness among students, and more problems could be caused, which is why some details can be forgotten and kept confidential. This is why Nezu, the recovery girl, and Izuku are the only ones in the school who know about his age. Now this girl can be added to the list as well. Seeing all the problems his age alone could cause would make one wonder why Izuku revealed his age to someone he just met in the first place. Well, the reason was to distract her. The girl asked a lot about his skills in USJ, so after seeing her personality, Izuku realized in a few seconds that the girl could be distracted by the mention of his older age. Plus, Her life force tells Izuku that she is a kind and gentle soul, so he could trust her with such a secret, since to her it's no big deal to gossip about. Again, Izuku paid attention to her when she spoke again. "Hey, so can we talk more?" she asked excitedly. Izuku heard this and shook his head. "No, not now, I have a photo shoot till evening, sorry," he said, and the girl got a little sad but instantly recovered with a smile. "Oh well, can we talk some other time?" she asked with a bright smile. So positive, Izuku thought to himself as he nodded and answered, "Yes, we can. I have photo shoots this week and the 1-week internships the next, but I can make time after that if nothing comes up." He spoke. The girl's face lit up again. "Really, that sounds nice. Give me your phone, I'll put my number in it so we can talk and chat." And before she kept going, Izuku pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and opened his contacts for her to save her number in. "Here," Izuku said, already realizing that if he didn't do this she would keep speaking and getting off topic. She grabbed his phone excitedly, typed her number in it, and handed it back. "Here," she said with a cute smile. Izuku took it back and looked at the name, looked up at his new acquaintance, a face and name he already knew from the records he memorized from the opportunity he created for himself on the first day of school. She is a fair-skinned girl with above-average height and a shapely figure. While pretty and attractive, she is more of the cute kind than the why kind. She has wide and curious royal blue eyes with upper eyelashes that are long and thick. Her hair is periwinkle, reaching down to her knees, twisting around itself at her waist, and curving inwards around her legs. She has side-swept bangs, tucked behind her ears on the right and hanging just over her eyes on the left, and 2 short clumps of hair on either side of her face, curved towards her face on the right and behind it, under her ear, on the left. She looked at Izuku and used her quirk to float a little in the air and spoke. "How rude of me, I didn't introduce myself. I'm a 3rd year in the hero course, my name's Najire Hado. To be continue. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video."